I'm not here to just tell you what could happen in the month of April, although you will get some insight into that. I'm here to guide you on how, keyword how, you can handle the energy throughout the month, but also how you can use the energy to your absolute advantage. This is because I provide a forecast based on all major personal placements in your birth chart, just so that you understand your energy and the opportunities the month will present to you on a much more personalized level. And so first, I will start with a general overview for my fellow astrology nerdos who want to know what this energy could mean on a more collective level. And then I will dive into the personal placements, which I do have timestamps for down in the description. And so now that we have that out of the way, go down to the description, look for your placements. I know that's what you're here for. And let's get to the heart of the matter in 3, 2, 1, go. So before I go into the transits for the month of April, I do want to clarify that all transits may be felt for a week before or after the transit actually hits. And so if I say a transit and I say a date, just know that you could feel the effects a little bit earlier or a little bit later. And so let's go into it. Starting off the month, April kicks off with a full moon in Libra on the 1st. And this brings a wave of emotional intensity that will demand fairness and balance in whatever area of life's relevant for you. And Libra tends to understand the world through a balanced perspective, through the lens of others. It tries to be unbiased. But with this moon squaring Jupiter in Cancer and opposing Aries placements, the energy is highly charged. And so on a personal level, you could feel pulled between your own high intuitive emotions. You could feel very emotional at this time, and the loud instinctual demands of the circumstances around you. And this could look like a standoff with a partner or a boss, where you have to weigh your deep need for emotional safety against their immediate requirement for action. And on a societal level, this energy could manifest as maybe an empathetic public sentiment clashing with maybe a forward-moving independent force, which is kind of already happening. We could just see this come to a head, and we could see public outcry over an impulsive policy change, maybe forcing leadership to adopt an equitable, balanced resolution, as if they're actually going to do that, or maybe, there'll be a push for people to want that to happen. But because there is a trine to Pluto in Aquarius to this energy, this could offer a transformed perspective on the world that can help us, navigate the rocky waters that we're currently facing. And then moving on to the 3rd, Venus and Taurus will be squaring with Pluto in Aquarius. And keep in mind the signs and the planets involved here. So Taurus is steady, methodical, and grounded. And Aquarius is innovative. It likes change a lot more than Taurus. And it walks to the beat of its own drum. And so on a personal level, you could crave methodical groundedness in your daily life or your relationships, but you could feel disrupted by how fast things are changing in some way. And so, for example, you could want to cling to a secure, predictable job, only to have like an industry shakeup force you to adapt your skills and look at things from another point of view. I'm already facing this in my job. And on a societal level, we could see a collective desire for practical economic stability facing unavoidable systemic shifts. We're already kind of seeing this, but it could, like I said, come to a head on this date. This can look like traditional, physical, financial institutions kind of clashing with decentralized, sudden technological advancements. There could be some key news with money at this time. Take that with a grain of salt, though. The key during this transit, though, is open-mindedness rather than gripping onto what is slipping away. And then the pace will accelerate when Mars enters the sign of Aries, its home, on April 9th. And so personally, you could feel a somatic surge of bravery and a push to go after what you want. And because Mars rules how we exert energy, this could look like suddenly finding the courage to launch a solo project or to set a boundary. You could just be feeling more energetic. I also find when I'm in public and Mars is in a sign it likes to be in, so Capricorn, Scorpio, or Aquarius, the crowds are a little bit more manageable. People are a little less clumsy. But also conversely, with this transit, though, you could find that action is being directed towards you, like maybe a competitor in maybe your field, or I don't know, with a relationship. That's kind of tea, but a competitor in some way could challenge your position. And societally, this could look like nations or groups taking action without waiting for consensus. You could see a lot more, action-oriented decisions being made, which I know sounds scary, but this could be, for the better or the worse. Remember, transits are neutral, and it's kind of honestly not as bad as maybe if Mars was in detriment. I think I would be a lot more scared of tension with that. And so spend your physical and mental energy wisely. You could burn out with this transit, especially if you don't have an exalted Mars natally. So this is going to be the key at this time. And then moving on to April 12th, Mars will be conjoining Neptune in Aries, and so boundaries around how energy is asserted could become blurred. This is a time for creative action taking on already established dreams. Remember, the dreams have to be established. Do not jump into the unknown, because if you have an idea with the Neptune transit, it could be a little bit foggy, but if it's something you already kind of had an idea on, you're more likely to succeed with that. And so personally, you could feel an urge to pitch a bold creative project, but you need to double check the fine print to ensure you aren't acting on a false assumption. And if you feel tired at this time, because Neptune just kind of blur the boundaries of whatever planet it is touching. And so you could feel tired. Your energy could be blurry. If you are tired, do not force physical exertion. And so societally, this period could bring a lot of global communications, and we could see maybe a viral news story that sparks a lot of action, or, a lot of instinctual gut reactions from people. And maybe after this happens, the facts are later revealed to be as incomplete. And so verify what you hear so that we don't overexert what does not serve us. And then Mercury enters Aries on the 14th as well. And so mental patterns and thoughts can become quick, but also communications could be harsher or blunter. Pisces is foggy. Aries is definitely not. And so personally, you could experience a flood of ideas and understand exactly how you want to take action. This could look like, for example, maybe you are very good at brainstorming and you know how to kind of act on your thoughts a lot more quickly, but you need to consciously pace yourself so you do not speak impulsively or say something you do not mean. Do not make promises you cannot keep at this time as well, because you will feel the pressure from that. And so societally as well, discourse could become highly direct, fast-paced. There could be a lot of speed over nuance, and there could be a lot of blunt, news headlines or truths come to the surface at this time. And then on April 16th, the Sun in Aries will be conjoining Chiron in Aries. I know what you're thinking. Why is there so much Aries? The answer to that is there's just a lot of Aries. I don't know how that happened, but it's happening, so we got to live with it. And so wounds around your confidence, your vitality, and your ability to start things could be illuminated at this time. Personally, this could manifest as maybe finally asserting yourself in a dynamic where you have historically stayed quiet out of fear. And it's an opportunity to use past shortcomings as fuel. Maybe if something didn't work out in your past, now's the time you can go after it. And existentially at this time as well, society could be forced to look at its own wounds regarding independence and how it sort of asserts itself. And this could look like a community publicly addressing maybe a fallout on how it previously used forced, or maybe it rushed into conflict. That is kind of a good version of this manifestation, but it could also just mean the wounds of nations or the wounds of policies simply come to the surface in some way. And then also on the 16th, we will have Mercury conjoining with Neptune. Similar to the Mars transit, this is a time to get intuitive downloads and to be very compassionate with your thoughts. However, mental data gets easily confused at this time. Remember, Neptune blurs. And so personally, you could receive mixed signals in a conversation. Maybe you're typing a text message and you're kind of what? I don't know how to phrase this. It kind of feels like Mercury retrograde. It's not Mercury retrograde, but it is a similar dynamic. And so I would approach new impulses at this time with caution and file major news away to review later. Societally as well, leaders or media could just say things that they don't mean or lack clarity on, which is no news story, but it could be especially, apparent at this time. So really check your sources, verify your information before reacting to anything, even if it really seems like the truth. And then on the 17th, the new moon in Aries will conjoin with Chiron. This is kind of a similar energy to the Sun conjoining Chiron. And this can bring the wounds mentioned earlier kind of to a head. And so personally, this could be an excellent time for a fresh start regarding your life force or your identity to actually go after the thing that you want that I talked about earlier. And maybe if you felt a little stutter step, a little bit earlier in the month, this new moon will push you to finally take that leap you want to take. And so you can forgive yourself for where you've stalled, and you can really find a new way to assert who you are. And this could look like maybe officially launching that business after years of doubting your capabilities. Crazy story about that. I know this isn't an eclipse, but last year, it was last year, eclipse in Aries. This is exactly what I did. I started my YouTube channel around that eclipse in Aries. And so this is a great time to start a business, start that YouTube channel, or you can change how you introduce to the world. And existentially, this offers a collective clean slate if you are willing to address uncomfortable truths head on, and you can plan how to assert, shared goals with communities or, with causes moving forward. This is kind of like a new life if you are an advocate or if you are connected to a larger network in some way. And then from the 19th to the 20th, we have Mars, Mercury, and Saturn piling up in Aries. Obviously, this will be a larger date frame, but this kind of peaks around the 19th to the 20th. And so Saturn deals with structure and limiting pressures. And personally, this could feel like a roadblock. Maybe the stuff that you thought about during the beginning of the month, maybe you kind of like see the limitations or the actual work required to do that. Maybe you have the motivation to launch a venture, but maybe you're forced to wait on permits or funding, or you need more information, or it's just going to take a lot of time. However, this transit is kind of like, what is that thing called when you're driving and a speed bump. It's kind of like a necessary speed bump because it's a vital opportunity to really apply discipline to your ideas before you burn out. And societally, I would expect authority figures and regulations to slow down fast-moving momentum, or maybe there's a new law or something that kind of feels like it's stifling your freedom in some way. This isn't to scare you. I don't mean it in like your life's going to be like locked down type of way, but maybe you see kind of like laws that it kind of attempts to like put people or put things in their place, if that makes sense. It could be also, fiscally, maybe we see more strict money laws, but also this could look like grassroots movements kind of hitting a wall of bureaucratic red tape. Maybe there are protests and, there are people fighting for causes, and we kind of see that, stop a little bit, and we could see people evaluating how to, put their cause or their voice out there with a more structured approach. And then on the 19th, we enter Taurus season, which really asks us to slow down with all of this fast-paced energy and to actually learn how to root and materialize our realities. And so after a period of fast energy, things could slow down a little bit in pace. I don't know about you. Aries season is incredibly fast for me. Taurus season feels slower. It's like literal time moves differently. And so personally, you could focus on rooting yourself and finding what makes you feel secure. This could look like shifting your focus from generating more abstract ideas to physically building the prototype, or maybe focusing on your daily routines and physical comfort in some way. But then the energy kind of takes a turn on April 23rd. We have Venus conjoining Uranus and Taurus in the very, 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 very final degree. I say very final degree because I think it shifts 1 or 2 days after, maybe even less. And so personally, you could wake up with a realization that what you value in a relationship or with your aesthetics or with your career or with your money or your passions, maybe it's changed. This is kind of the final note of Uranus and Taurus. And so all of the themes for Uranus and Taurus for you, you're kind of maybe going to get, at least the message on what it was trying to get you to rebel against, or this could be, the final hurrah for this is what I'm letting go of, this is who I am, and this is what I value. And this could prompt a desire to rebel against what brings you insecurity for one last push. And this could look like maybe changing financial strategies to gain more freedom. Maybe you quit that job. Maybe you let go of that addiction to food or whatever you're addicted to. I'm addicted to food, but I kind of think we all are in some way. There are some people that really genuinely don't like food. They see it as fuel. That could never be me. And if that's you, look, I'm not judging you, but you could let go of something that no longer serves you. And maybe you could end a partnership in some cases. And societally, this could, result in an unpredictable market trend that could catch the public off guard. It could be for better or for worse. Remember that. And this could, require a dance between adaptability and practicality. Don't put all your money in one stock or crypto coin at this time. Trust me. And then later on the 23rd, Venus will be entering Gemini. And so our desires and values can shift to a more clever, investigative plane. Things could feel more lighthearted. Personally, you could feel pulled towards your passions in a way that aims to learn and communicate as much as possible. You could understand things on a more verbal level. This could also look like maybe researching a new hobby or connecting with a new social group based on shared intellectual interests rather than emotional depth. Or maybe when it comes to your passions, you just want to understand them more. It's as simple as that. And then it's going to also be followed by Uranus entering Gemini on the 25th. And that conjunction to Venus is probably still there. And so looking back at the forward-moving Aries transits and the push for security in early Taurus season, with Venus conjoining Uranus right here in Gemini, it's going to change gears. This is going to give it the ingress a very supercharged start. And so personally, maybe a sudden spark regarding your passions or a piece of curious information could arrive. Maybe you kind of realize, what do you want to rebel against during this Uranus and Gemini season? You might realize, maybe the best parts that this Uranus and Gemini transit over the next however many years, you may realize the best parts that this is going to give you, because remember, Venus is a benefic. And you could also stumble upon maybe a new field of study or a community that really shifts your mental landscape. Or maybe you just discover a new piece of information that really changes your outlook on life for the better. And then simultaneously on the 25th, though, we will be having a Sun in Taurus square Pluto in Aquarius transit. And so your core need for personal security could feel a little bit disrupted by forces that really demand that you break the mold. This could be internal or external. Maybe personally, a new piece of technology or a sudden change at work could kind of like threaten your comfortable daily routine. Maybe there's just something outside of your control that really, threatens your sense of safety, not necessarily from a major way, but from a, oh, I kind of wish I could just relax right now way. And this could force you to update your methods, but on a global scale, we could see established practical power structures struggling to control a more detached, centralized wave of new media or AI advancements. Take what resonates with that. I'm keeping it vague on purpose because we all know that that's coming. And so I would use an outside point of view to assess what actually needs to adapt instead of stubbornly clinging to the past. That is the key for that time. And then finally, to close the month, on April 26th, we have Mercury and Aries squaring with Jupiter in Cancer. And so tension between maybe like fast mental insights, your brain is moving fast, and an intuitive, empathetic search for meaning can run high. That's the literal definition. You're probably wondering what that means. So personally, maybe you have this urge to like blurt out a truth to a loved one because it feels urgent. Rather than taking the time to deliver it compassionately, this is a time where people could impulsively speak and people get sad about it. And so it's kind of a clash between the head and the heart. But existentially, we could see leaders, for example, making sweeping statements to stir up public emotion. Nothing new, but we could just see that exasperated. And maybe whatever they're trying to stir, it could lack practical meaning at this time. Remember that. So let yourself sit with this tension to see what it reveals and avoid speaking impulsively when your sense of emotional safety is challenged. You got to pause if you're feeling heated and wait to say it when you know you can say it a little bit better than, what you would say in the moment. I hope that makes sense. And so as a general word of advice for this month, we are really navigating an era where the demand for innovation could constantly rub against our human need for steady security. We don't like change. We're humans. I know a lot of people say they like it. I think to a degree we do. We like evolution. We don't like change naturally. And so you have to choose between evolving and feeling safe, because true stability can be found in your adaptability. Let your methods change and your perspectives be updated by new information. Pace yourself. Verify your facts this month. And remember that real growth can feel like disruption before it feels like an upgrade. And so if you want to see how this month is going to play out for you, go down to the timestamps, look for your placements, and let's get to the heart of what this month is going to look like for you, but also what you can do about it to best manage your energy. Aries Rising, right at the start of the month, the April 1st full moon in Libra will illuminate your 7th house of partnerships and relationships, which will offer a vital counterbalance to your solitary sense of drive. And so while the upcoming Aries energy makes your personal ambitions loud, this early lunation, which squares an emotional Jupiter in Cancer while trining Pluto, will ask you to view your dynamics fairly and unbiasedly, embracing a willingness to change your perspective on how you connect with others, and this will provide the exact relational harmony that you need to navigate the individual roadblocks ahead. And this early need for balance is crucial because for the rest of April, the sensation is akin to standing in a wind tunnel while trying to build a brick wall. So there could be an intense forward moving surge of energy coursing through your body, demanding immediate action, yet it could feel like it meets a heavy, immovable atmospheric pressure. And with a cluster of planetary energy in your first house of self, appearance, and vitality this month, you could feel a somatic heat, which is accelerated by Mars entering your sign on the 9th, and it peaks with the new moon in your sign on the 17th. And it could feel like a buzzing in your nervous system that makes sitting still feel nearly impossible, and you could feel an instinctual push to go after what it is you want, feeling braver and more willing to assert your identity at this time. However, as this raw energy builds, it could meet the sobering limiting pressure of Saturn, which kind of peaks exactly during the 19th and 20th with a conjunction to Mars and Mercury. And this could create a sensation of energetic constipation, or maybe there's a sudden roadblock you hit in some way, and the environment around you could feel loud, perhaps even demanding, which requires you to find an internal center of gravity. And then as the month progresses and Taurus season begins on the 19th, which activates your second house of possessions and values, the urgency could begin to cool, and it could shift your focus towards rooting yourself, seeking steady comfort, and materializing the bursts of inspiration you experienced earlier. Yet, this groundedness could be electrified as Uranus pushes into your third house of communication and mindset on the 25th, which is supercharged by Venus also entering Gemini just before it on the 23rd. And so the air could feel different, it could feel thinner, faster, more electric. And so this combination of energetic surges and disruptions could manifest in highly specific scenarios within your daily life, acting either as loud external events or quiet internal realizations. So first, regarding the April 17th new moon in Aries, you could experience an external event such as a superior or a demanding circumstance directly challenging your autonomy or the way you present yourself to the world. However, this is precisely where the earlier April 1st Libra full moon acts as your critical counterbalance. So while this Aries challenge could trigger high emotions and a desire to fight back, especially with Jupiter and Cancer squaring this lunation, this full moon's trine to Pluto will allow you to utilize an unbiased diplomatic approach if you are aware of the dynamic happening, and you could surrender your ego to fairly negotiate with this outside force instead of going to war. However, it doesn't have to play out externally. It could manifest entirely as a whisper from within. Maybe there's a sudden realization that could illuminate inner wounds around your confidence, which is also brought to light by the Sun conjoining with Chiron on the 16th, which could force you to crystallize a new emotional boundary regarding your self-worth without any outside forces kind of feeding into that. Secondly, as well, sparked by the April 14th Mercury in Aries transit, you could experience a deeply internal realization, maybe an intuitive download about your own identity, feeling a fire to launch a new version of yourself at this time. Or maybe you understand yourself better because there's, circumstances that could teach you about yourself. And on a physical level, this energy might instead manifest by attracting external roadblocks. Maybe there's physical limitations that you run into, or maybe you kind of have to check your energy at this time, or there could be something at the very least that forces you to slow down and deliberately plan how you assert yourself in whatever it is that you want to do. And then thirdly, during the tense April 25th Sun in Taurus transit squaring with Pluto in Aquarius, maybe a sudden shift regarding your broader community, your friend groups, or your long-term societal goals could occur externally, or this friction could just arise from within, directly challenging your core need for practical security, demanding that you utilize an objective perspective to regulate your nervous system so that you can change your approach to, how you put yourself out there in society and how you approach security in general. And the specific challenge this month for you lies in the high probability of energetic burnout and information overload. And because you are naturally very action oriented, no matter how action looks to you, the immense pressure to maybe assert yourself combined with the influx of new data and ideas as Uranus shifts into Gemini on the 25th could lead you to acting impulsively on uncharted information in some way. And you run the risk of overexerting yourself to the point of exhaustion, pushing against roadblocks instead of recognizing them as necessary structural delays. But the opportunity this month is immense if you can harness the art of disciplined pacing. And by refusing to take delays personally and using moments of energetic constipation to refine your strategy, you could heal ingrained wounds around your ability to initiate and lead in your life. Furthermore, the entry of Uranus into the sector of your mind and communication offers such a good opportunity to revolutionize your skill set. Your best strategy is to embrace mental flexibility and investigative curiosity. Start learning a new language, a new technology, or a new way of communicating this month. And if you can sit with the tension of wanting to move fast while being forced to build methodically, you could channel this month's friction into a grounded, innovative new chapter of personal development, ensuring your future self is equipped with a sharp and adaptable mind that can really take on anything. Taurus Rising, right as the month begins, the April 1st full moon in Libra will light up your sixth house of health and routine, acting as a deep mediator for your physical vessel before deeper psychological shifts will take over. And because this full moon squares a highly emotional Jupiter in Cancer, you could feel the intensity of your daily tasks, clashing with maybe your deep, unseen feelings. Yet its harmonious trine to Pluto in Aquarius invites a transformed perspective on your daily habits, finding a fair, unbiased balance in your day to day life and surrendering to a gentler physical routine will provide the crucial energetic anchor that you need while the subconscious storms could rage. You will need this anchor because the experience of the rest of April could feel like navigating a submerged submarine while the ocean surface above undergoes an intense storm. And the vast majority of the month's forward moving action will be localized in your 12th house of the subconscious, the unseen, and spirituality, driven by Mars entering Aries on the 9th and the potent Aries new moon on the 17th. Physically, this translates to a strange paradox. Your body could feel tired or in need of deep rest, while your mental and emotional landscape is racing at 100 miles an hour. You could feel a localized heat in your dream state and your intuition, maybe subconscious impulses, buried frustrations, or old wounds regarding how you assert your inner power could loudly bubble to the surface. It could feel as though action is happening to you from behind the scenes, creating a heavy atmospheric pressure that you cannot quite see or touch, but that you can heavily feel within your nervous system. And then, as the sun moves into your first house of self and vitality, when Taurus season begins on the 19th, the energy for you will shift dramatically. You could feel a sudden urge to really root yourself, to solidify your presence, or to find tangible security in your own skin. However, this desire for steady groundedness could be interrupted around the 25th as Uranus permanently shifts into your second house of possessions, self esteem, and values, supercharged by Venus also entering Gemini on the 23rd. And the sensation could feel like a jolting electricity with your relationship to the material world or your own self worth or your skills. You could say, "This is me, but now what? What do I do with me? Like, what do I build? What do I, create?" And this deliberate comfort that you crave could be replaced by a sudden buzzing frequency that demands that you innovate what you value, how you earn, and what actually constitutes as safety in your reality. And this interplay between unseen subconscious pressure and sudden material disruption could manifest in highly specific ways, either acting as external disruptions or deep internal shifts. First, triggered by the April 17th new moon in Aries in your 12th house, you could encounter a deeply external scenario such as a hidden piece of information, a secret, or an unseen dynamic suddenly coming to light in your environment. But here is when the April 1st Libra full moon in your sixth house of health really serves as a vital counterbalance. Because while the sudden Aries revelation could send your emotions into a tailspin, exasperated by Jupiter in Cancer, the full moon's trine to Pluto really empowers you to maintain a fair, balanced perspective by strictly adhering to a grounded daily routine, allowing you to objectively process the unseen chaos without letting it physically take over you. Alternatively, this could just be a quiet whisper from within. Maybe a sudden realization could illuminate psychological wounds regarding your emotional boundaries, which is brought to surface by the sun conjoining with Chiron on the 16th, which really forces you to crystallize a firm need to withdraw your emotional energy to protect your peace. Secondly, sparked by this April 16th Mercury conjunct Neptune transit, you could experience a purely internal realization, maybe a spiritual awakening or another spiritual awakening if you've already had some, which you've probably had a lot with Aries in your 12th house. Or there could be a jarring insight about an unhelpful subconscious pattern that you've been harboring. And on an external level, as Taurus season begins on the 19th, this energy could prompt you to take action direction regarding who you are, your appearance, your personal vitality. You could change how you present yourself to the world, or, you could align yourself with new truths, or you could, just feel a lot of energy after a period of incubation. Thirdly, during a tense April 25th Sun in Taurus square Pluto in Aquarius transit, maybe there could be a disruption regarding your career trajectory. Maybe a boss or your public image or your idea of what you want to do with your life could, shake up things, or this sudden change could really manifest as a direct challenge to your core safety, your personal identity, and psychological need for grounding, which requires you to utilize an objective perspective to regulate your nervous system so that you could subsequently change how you approach your career or your public life. You need to align yourself with your goals in some way. And so the most significant friction you face this month is the temptation to stubbornly dig your heels and resist the rapid changes occurring in your material and psychological landscape. And because your core nature seeks stability, the disruptions to your values or material reality, coupled with the exhausting unseen psychological activity, could push you towards heightened anxiety or an overwhelming fear of the unknown. And if you try to force new, ungrounded actions while your body is demanding rest, or if you cling rigidly to outdated concepts of security, you could experience notable energetic depletion. And so the deep opportunity this month is the mastery of radical adaptability and the conscious release of subconscious baggage. And this is the moment to heal the parts of your psyche that feel stalled or defeated. And when you hit a roadblock, use the heavy, disciplined Saturnian energy, especially between the 19th and 20th with the Mars Mercury Saturn conjunction, to structure your healing process rather than forcing external action. And as the multi-year shift begins with Uranus shifting into Gemini, into your second house, your ultimate opportunity is to reinvent your relationship with the material world through investigation rather than fear. Start learning a new financial skill. Explore innovative ways to utilize your natural talents and embrace the fact that true security right now comes from your mental flexibility. And if you can sit with the tension of high emotions and mental insights while remaining genuinely open to new ways of living, you can revolutionize your sense of self-worth so much this month that you could really birth a new self. Gemini Rising, April opens with the April 1st full moon in Libra, activating your fifth house of creativity and pleasure, asking you to find an early equilibrium between maybe societal pressures or group demands and your personal joy before this collective environment becomes too loud, because it will be loud for you this month. And with a tense square to an emotional Jupiter in Cancer, to this full moon, your desire for maybe romantic or creative harmony could temporarily clash with underlying emotional insecurities. But a supportive trine to Pluto to this full moon offers a brilliantly transformed perspective if you can surrender the need to control how you express yourself. This will help you tap into a balanced, fair sense of play that can anchor you early on. And trust me, this internal anchoring is vital, because the sensation of the rest of April for you could feel like standing in the center of a crowded, animated room where everybody is shouting a lot of ideas at once, right before the entire room goes completely silent, which leaves you alone with a strikingly clear electric current running through your own body. There's going to be a lot of information overload for you this month, potentially. But the month quickly shifts to a rush of energy in your 11th house of community, goals, in your place in society, which is ignited by Mars entering Aries on the 9th, and then the April 17th new moon in Aries. There's a lot of Aries going on. And so you could feel a buzzing, highly social atmosphere around you. Maybe you feel pushed to assert your goals within a group, or you could feel that the collective environment is directing an intense amount of action towards you. It could be, you're asserting yourself, or it could be that things are being asserted onto you. And your nervous system could be highly stimulated by rapid fire brainstorming, direct communications, and a fierce drive to move your social aspirations forward. However, as Taurus season begins and planets migrate into your 12th house of the subconscious, this sensation could shift from external hyperactivity, it could feel very busy, to a heavy, grounded slowness. You could feel a somatic need to retreat, to seek steady silence, or to process the massive influx of social data in isolation. And then the monumental shift of the month will occur on the 25th because Uranus enters your first house of self, appearance, and vitality. And this is supercharged by Venus also entering your sign just before on the 23rd. And so the reality of your body, who you are, your identity, is about to become a lightning rod for rapid innovation and disruption. It is your time to rebel against the version of yourself that is outdated. And this whiplash between social intensity, quiet retreat, and sudden personal electrification can show up in varied, realistic scenarios, acting as either external events, this could be external, or quiet internal realization. First, fueled by the April 17th new moon in Aries, you could experience an external situation where a friend group, a professional network, or a community organization, or maybe a group on social media, suddenly demands that you take a leadership role, or maybe it boldly pushes a collective agenda onto you. But thankfully, the April 1st full moon in Libra in your 5th house of personal joy will act as a vital counterbalance to this loud collective pressure you could be feeling. And even though Jupiter in Cancer could make you feel maybe emotionally obligated to sacrifice your own needs for the group or for, societal pressures, the full moon's trine to Pluto allows you to assert a balanced diplomatic boundary, ensuring that you surrender to your own creative passions rather than being completely swallowed by society or the collective's urgent demands or urgent energy. Alternatively, this could manifest as a whisper from within, forcing you to recognize where your people-pleasing tendencies or past emotional wounds around your social standing have stalled your true confidence, brought to a head by Sun conjoining with Chiron in Aries on the 16th, which requires you to crystallize rigid energetic boundaries. Secondly, maybe sparked by the empathetic Mercury conjunct Neptune transit, maybe an internal manifestation could occur where you receive a lightning bolt inner epiphany regarding your long-term goals or your exact place in society within your 11th house. On a physical level, you could instead feel an urge to radically alter maybe your aesthetic, your daily habits, or the way you present yourself to other people as Venus enters your sign. Maybe this revolution really gets a jump start and you really embody this new way of being because of that. Thirdly, during an intense April 25th Sun in Taurus square Pluto and Aquarius transit, you could face an unyielding, disruptive energy externally regarding a legal matter, a travel plan, or an academic pursuit. Alternatively, though, this friction could arise entirely from within, challenging your deep psychological need for quiet, behind the scenes emotional security, and steady spiritual grounding, demanding that you use an objective perspective to regulate your nervous system so that you can change your philosophical approach to life to help navigate the disruption and the changes that you will be going through. The specific challenge for you during this month is the very real potential for nervous system stimulation or intellectual exhaustion. And with the massive influx of energy moving into your sign, maybe changing how you talk, think, and process reality makes you highly susceptible to information overload, scattered focus, or mental anxiety due to the awareness of the intensity going on around you. And if you attempt to act impulsively on every single new idea that floods your curious brain, especially given the rush tension of the April 26th Mercury square Jupiter transit, or if you feel pressured to keep up with every single trend or social demand, you could scatter your life force and fail to build anything sustainable. But the tremendous opportunity here is to consciously curate your curiosity and take disciplined responsibility for your energetic output. This is a phenomenal time to begin learning a highly specific specific new skill that requires a lot of focus, channeling that energy into something that your future self will tangibly benefit from. Use the period of energetic constipation or social roadblocks, such as with the Mars Mercury Saturn conjunction from the 19th to the 20th, to methodically crystallize exactly what your true goals are, rather than just riding the wave of whatever the loudest, energy in the room is. And if you can balance your desire for rapid personal evolution with a grounded approach to which information you should actually allow into your energetic field, you could transform your identity and your ability to interact with the world on such a large level that could really permeate your life for years to come. Cancer rising this month opens up with the April 1st full moon in Libra, deeply illuminating your fourth house of home and roots, demanding that you establish internal harmony before conquering the massive professional mountains you might see ahead. And because this lunation squares Jupiter in your own sign, you could feel deeply in your feels and emotionally heightened. Yet this full moon's trine to Pluto in Aquarius promises a completely transformed perspective if you are willing to look at your innermost foundations fairly, surrendering to a balanced, unbiased view of your private emotional life. And this will be the exact bedrock that you need. You need this month to withstand the loud external pressures of your ambitions, what you want to achieve in life, your career. And with this foundation set, the atmospheric pressure of the rest of April could feel like pushing a massive boulder up a steep, visible mountain, only to realize the summit is actually an entirely new, complex landscape that you have to navigate. It's like you get over the hill and then you realize the push ain't over. And this month is dominated by a fierce, forward moving concentration of energy in your 10th house of career, public image, and your role to the public eye, which is amplified by Mars entering Aries on the 9th and the bold new moon in Aries on the 17th. And so you could feel a heavy somatic weight of responsibility mixed with a hot, urgent drive to assert your authority or to achieve a major milestone, no matter what that milestone is. The physical sensation might be one of high visibility. You could feel that your every move is being watched, judged, or challenged by external forces, such as bosses, authority figures, or maybe the structural demands of whatever industry you're in or that you're trying to get in. There is a bodily tension here as well, maybe a feeling of being pushed to act braver and faster than your intuitive pace prefers, which could lead to physical sensations of stress in your shoulders or your back if you're not careful. And then, as Taurus season begins on the 19th and grounds in your 11th house of community, the frantic public pushing could slow down, replaced by a desire to find steady security and tangible support, maybe within your friend groups or your networks. However, this grounding is swiftly undercut on April 25th when Uranus shifts into your 12th house of the subconscious, the unseen, and spirituality, preceded by Venus entering Gemini on the 23rd. And so this shift could be disorienting. The rapid innovations, sudden disruptions, and rapid influx of new information are moving entirely behind the scenes into your internal psychological basement. And so you could feel an unpredictable buzzing in your intuition or in your dream state, or a sensation that deep, rapid changes are occurring just out of sight, which challenges your deep-seated need for emotional safety and control. You could be getting a lot of downloads starting this month. And so this intense focus on public assertion needing internal behind-the-scenes electricity could manifest in several distinct scenarios, which could be either external events or quiet internal realizations. First, driven by the intense energy of the April 17th new moon in Aries, you could experience an external event where a sudden change in upper management at your work, maybe a new public responsibility, or a demanding career project or a goal, maybe if you're applying for jobs, is kind of thrust upon you without warning. And this is where the April 1st to Libra full moon in your fourth house will act as your ultimate counterbalance, because while Jupiter in your own sign makes your emotional reaction to these demands is a little bit high, the full moon's trine to Pluto will allow you to retreat into your private sanctuary, providing a fair, unbiased perspective on what truly matters so you don't completely lose yourself to these loud external forces of your, career demands or your ambitions if you really use this Libra full moon properly. Alternatively, this energy could manifest as a whisper from within, requiring that you inwardly confront and heal buried emotional wounds regarding your competence, illuminated by the Sun conjunct Chiron in Aries on April 16th. Maybe your fear of failure or your ability to stand in your own authority will need to be addressed. Secondly, sparked by the April 16th Mercury conjunct Neptune transit, this could manifest as a purely internal professional realization. You could experience a jarring mental download, a flood of intuitive data regarding your public image, or a disruptive insight that completely changes your internal perspective on your career trajectory or what you want to do with your life or your ambitions or how you approach them at the very least. And then on an external level, this period could prompt tangible changes, potentially causing you to suddenly alter how you interact with your broader community or your social networks, as Taurus season will stabilize in your 11th house. Thirdly, under the tense April 25th Sun in Taurus square Pluto and Aquarius transit may be a sudden disruption in your shared resources, your debts, or the power dynamics of, a business partnership or an intimate partnership, or, even an energetic sort of dynamic could occur. Or maybe this sudden shift could manifest purely internally, significantly challenging the steady emotional stability and practical grounding you seek within your long term goals or psychological sense of community, which requires you to utilize an objective perspective to regulate your emotions so that you can change your approach to setting boundaries in terms of how you put yourself out there in the public. The primary friction for you this month is the risk of allowing fear, maybe past ambition or professional wounds, or an overwhelming sense of emotional insecurity to completely stall your progress or cause you to act out defensively. And with tense squares to Jupiter in your empathetic sign, peaking with Mercury in Aries, making a square to Jupiter in Cancer on the 26th, the rush of big intuitive ideas and high emotions could be at odds with the direct active energy required by your ambitions. And if you take career roadblocks a little bit personally, or you stubbornly cling to outdated methods of achieving security when the universe is demanding evolution, you could experience notable emotional exhaustion or fatigue. But the opportunity available for you this month is the chance to completely redefine your relationship with authority and your own subconscious mind. This is a powerful time to take Saturnian disciplined responsibility for your public trajectory using that April 19th to 20th Mars Mercury Saturn conjunction, deliberately choosing not to act on ungrounded impulsive career urges, but rather executing on established, deeply felt ambitions. Furthermore, the entry of Uranus into your 12th house is an invitation to revolutionize your spiritual practices and your psychological boundaries. And so, your best strategy is to stay incredibly curious about your own subconscious patterns. And if you can sit with the tension of intense public demands while allowing your internal world to rapidly evolve without fighting the process, you could emerge this month with a fortified presence and a newly liberated, adaptable inner life that could allow you to go after anything that you want to go after in your life with such a new, renewed energy. For my fellow Leo risings, right as the month begins, the April 1st full moon in Libra will highlight your third house of communication in your local environment or your mindset, requiring that you find harmony in your immediate surroundings before looking to distant horizons. This lunation will square a highly emotional Jupiter in Cancer, potentially causing your grand beliefs or your belief systems to clash with hidden emotional vulnerabilities, but its trine to Pluto will invite a fresh, transformed perspective on how you process daily information by embracing the art of surrender in your mindset and speaking with fair, unbiased diplomacy. And so you can counterbalance this heavy atmospheric roadblock to come through really grounding yourself with this full moon energy. And so following this early need for, local balance or balance within your mindset, that atmosphere of April for you could feel like a vast, rapid expansion of your peripheral vision, accompanied by a somatic restlessness that makes your current surroundings feel physically limiting to, the horizons you want to reach. And the immense concentration of forward moving energy will be heavily piled into your ninth house of higher learning, expansion, travel, and belief systems, accelerated by Mars entering Aries on April 9th and the new moon in Aries on the 17th. And so you could feel a bodily urge to break out, a literal itch in your legs to move, explore, and passionately defend your personal philosophies. And there could be a rush of mental and physical energy urging you to take brave action towards learning something massive or seeking a new horizon in your life in some way. However, this expansive push could constantly slam into the restrictive structure of Saturn, feeling like a potentially hard stop, especially between April 19th and 20th, due to the conjunction of Mars, Mercury, and Saturn, which could create a sensation of being tethered or facing significant bureaucratic, educational, or logistical roadblocks that kind of test your patience and the confidence in your vision. And as the energy shifts into Taurus on April 19th, with the sun entering Taurus and into your 10th house of career and public image, your focus can be forced to narrow, and you could feel a heavy pull to methodically materialize your expansive ideas into practical, visible results, requiring immense patience and a grounded approach. Yet, this steady, career building or this pursuit to your ambitions could be immediately jolted on the 25th because Uranus is permanently entering your 11th house of community, societal goals, and friendships. And this is supercharged by Venus also moving into Gemini on the 23rd. And so the air around your social life or your goals in society or your dreams could suddenly become electric and highly unpredictable. And so this friction between expansive desires, public responsibilities, and sudden social electricity, your life is basically going to be on full display because a lot of the top parts of your chart will be receiving action. This could play out in diverse and complex scenarios, which could manifest as either external realities or quiet internal shifts. First, triggered by the April 17th new moon in Aries alongside Saturn's restrictive presence here, you could face a significant external roadblock such as a tangible legal delay, an academic rejection letter, or a logistical nightmare regarding a planned trip. This isn't to scare you because it doesn't have to play out these ways, but to prevent frustration no matter how this plays out, you must lean on the counterbalance of the April 1st Libra full moon in your third house. Because while the grand delays might trigger intense emotions, the full moon's trine to Pluto will empower you to surrender your rigid, expansive plans and instead maybe find balanced, unbiased joy in your immediate surroundings, using diplomatic communication or diplomatic thoughts to pivot your approach entirely rather than focusing on a broken path. But alternatively, this doesn't have to play out externally. This could be a whisper from within, forcing you to inwardly sit with the emotional wounds surrounding your intellectual confidence, triggered by the Sun conjunct Chiron transit happening on the 16th in the sign of Aries, which could require you to restructure your core belief systems and cultivate the inner discipline to refine your ideas rather than emotionally abandoning them. Secondly, sparked by the rapid fire energy of the April 14th Mercury in Aries transit, this could manifest internally as a massive psychological shift in your moral or philosophical worldview. And you could experience a spontaneous inner paradigm shift that makes what you're pursuing in life feel deeply inauthentic on a soul level. And on a physical level, this energy could instead compel you to take, deliberate action to change, your public role and your professional trajectory as the sun shifts from your ninth house to the 10th house as Taurus season begins, which helps you to steadily align your external reality with your inner truths as long as you are aware of this energy and you work to make the most of it. Thirdly, during the highly tense April 25th Sun in Taurus square Pluto and Aquarius transit, maybe a sudden demanding change or a power struggle from a close partner, a spouse, a major collaborator, a one-on-one connection could occur. Or maybe this unpredictability could arise completely internally. Maybe there's a massive psychological challenge to the secure emotional foundation you're trying to establish within your ambitions or your career. And this is kind of like putting pressure on how you connect with others, or it could be due to your, relationship with others, requiring that you utilize an objective inner perspective to regulate your passion so that you can change your approach to your public goals to fit the sudden shifts. You need to be adaptable. And so the most notable challenge for you this month is the tendency to become, maybe intellectually arrogant, dogmatic, or maybe impatient with the delays that you could face this month, that you burn bridges or abandon viable projects prematurely. And because your energy naturally radiates outward, the feeling of energetic or mental constipation in your expansive pursuits could cause you to speak without a filter, especially surrounding the empathetic but rushed push of the April 26th Mercury square Jupiter transit. And so maybe asserting your opinions or acting on unverified, impulse-driven data could damage, what you're trying to build within your ambitions or public life. But the deep opportunity this month is to master the art of disciplined expansion and social adaptability. And so when you do hit a roadblock in your educational or travel goals, or maybe with your beliefs, do not view it as a failure if this happens, but as a mandatory period to crystallize your ideas and take true responsibility for your depth of knowledge. And then as Uranus enters your 11th house, your ultimate strategy is to remain curious and mentally flexible regarding who you associate with and what your long-term goals or your role in society is. This is a brilliant time to start learning a new skill or about a piece of technology or about, social systems to help you connect and innovate the communities that you're within. And if you can balance your passionate desire for grand experiences with the practical necessity of methodical execution, while also remaining open-minded to sudden shifts within your life, you could construct a highly influential and future-proof public life that can really help you achieve your goals. For my Virgo risings, before you plunge into the intense psychological depths of April for you, the April 1st full moon in Libra will anchor your second house of possessions, values, self-esteem, really urging you to secure your own worth before merging it with anyone or anything else. And while this full moon does make a square to Jupiter in Cancer, which could heighten your emotional responses regarding, how you connect your worth to the community or the long-term goals you have, the support of trine to Pluto and Aquarius will offer a deeply transformed perspective on your worth, on your resources. If you can view your tangible assets and self-esteem through a fair, balanced, and unbiased lens, this lunation could provide the necessary grounded surrender to help you safely navigate the complex power dynamics you will be facing ahead. And armed with this steady self-worth, the somatic experience of the rest of April for you could feel like you're performing a delicate, precise surgery while standing on a fault line that is actively trembling. And so the dense, highly concentrated energy of the month is buried deep into your 8th house of transformation, shared resources, debts, and the deepest psychological bonds that you have. And this is intensified by Mars entering Aries on April 9th and the new moon in Aries on the 17th. And so you're not going to experience the energy lightly. Just being real here, this could manifest as a tightness in your gut, a heavy somatic pressure related to power dynamics, financial entanglements, or deep emotional merging with another person or outside force. You could feel an intense forward-moving push to transform, to sever ties, or to bravely confront the shadows you usually analyze from a distance. However, this raw, impulsive drive to merge or cut cords could hit a rigid wall of Saturn, creating deep friction during the April 19th to 20th conjunction of Mars, Mercury, and Saturn, which could create a feeling of deep emotional or financial constipation, or a sensation of being trapped in a complex dynamic that requires such immense discipline to untangle. And as the sun moves into Taurus on the 19th, your ninth house of expansion and higher learning will become activated, which could offer a sensation of relief. Your body could crave the steady stability of philosophical understanding, and it could seek to deliberately make sense of the intense psychological depths that you've just navigated. But this intellectual grounded space will also be electrified on the 25th as Uranus pushes its way into your 10th house of career and public image, prefaced by Venus also entering Gemini on the 23rd. And so the ground beneath your professional life could suddenly feel a little bit changing. It could feel buzzing with rapid, unpredictable frequencies. You could feel an urge to rebel against the ambitions that you hold. And this intense subterranean pressure colliding with maybe sudden public disruption could show up in a few ways, presenting as either external events or quiet internal realizations. First off, triggered by the April 17th new moon in Aries, you could experience a deeply external event regarding shared resources. Maybe there's a tax issue, a conflict over inheritances, or a partner's financial state that will demand immediate direct action. This may not happen, but it could happen. And this intense entanglement, no matter what it is precisely why the April 1st Libra full moon in your second house of personal values will act as a critical counterbalance. Because while the crisis could trigger deep emotional insecurities, the full moon's trine to Pluto will allow you to stand firm in your own unbiased self-worth, surrendering the need to micromanage maybe outside chaos that's outside of your control, and instead diplomatically protect your own independent worth. But alternatively, this energy could manifest as a whisper from within, forcing you to directly face ingrained emotional wounds around control, brought to the surface by the sun conjoining with Chiron on the 16th. And so trust and your internal ability to rely on others could really surface, ultimately requiring that you forge a new, much more resilient emotional foundation. Secondly, sparked by the intuitive April 16th Mercury conjunct Neptune transit, the manifestation could be entirely internal. You could experience a deep realization about an unhelpful emotional pattern that you've been harboring in a close dynamic or within entanglements in the deepest parts of your life. On an external level, shifts in your real world could force you to take highly calculated action with these deep entanglements, and this could tie directly to your educational pursuits, maybe your travel plans, or your beliefs, especially as Taurus season begins on the 19th. Perhaps maybe deciding to physically leave a restrictive environment to expand your horizons. This could take place, or it could be, entirely within, because these, horizons that you're currently in no longer align with the transformed version of yourself. Thirdly, under the intense April 25th Sun in Taurus square Pluto and Aquarius transit, maybe a stubborn disruption regarding your day-to-day work environment, your health, or your actual employees could occur. But alternatively, this friction could arise internally, challenging your core psychological need for philosophical, expansive sense of security and the emotional safety of your deliberately planned, path to growth, requiring that you utilize an objective perspective to rapidly adapt your inner worldview while subsequently changing how you practically handle your daily approach. And so the specific friction for you this month is becoming so consumed by the need for control amidst unpredictability that you paralyze yourself with anxiety, or conversely, that you react harshly in situations that require delicate psychological maneuvering. And if you do act impulsively on a deep-seated fear regarding shared resources or the intense parts of life, or if you stubbornly resist the sudden necessary changes occurring within your ambitions and career sector, you could exhaust your nervous system, which could stall your progress. However, the powerful opportunity for the month is to utilize the intense energy of the eighth house to perform deep, lasting psychological healing and to crystallize a completely new approach to shared power and vulnerability. Take Saturnian responsibility for your debts, both financial and emotional. Do not act on ungrounded fears, but rather methodically to untangle the knots. And as Uranus revolutionizes your ambitions, your best strategy is to relinquish the need for perfect predictability and instead embrace extreme mental flexibility and clever investigation. Start learning a new professional skill. Maybe learn to communicate better, learn to interview, learn to, communicate to people of all backgrounds, because your future self will depend on this adaptability. And if you can sit with the deep tension of deep internal transformation while navigating sudden external professional shifts, with a curious mindset, you could emerge as a highly resilient and deeply empowered and publicly innovative force that can really achieve whatever it is that you set your mind to. For my Libra rising, right at the start of the month, the April 1st full moon is going to be in your sign. It's going to illuminate your first house of self and appearance, really demanding that you honor your own identity before the competing noise of, the rest of the world takes over later in the month. And so while the square to a Jupiter in Cancer to this full moon could make you feel a little bit overwhelmed, either maybe by your public reputation, maybe your career or your ambitions and your responsibilities. Like maybe you don't feel like you're doing enough or you want to do more. The trine to Pluto and Aquarius to this full moon gives you the ability to gain a fresh, transformed perspective on your own identity, on who you are, on your vitality, by embracing the art of surrender and viewing your own needs with the same unbiased fairness that you would naturally grant other people. And so this lunation could help you reclaim your autonomy as long as you view yourself from an objective lens. And this is crucial because for the rest of the month, the sensation of April could feel like being placed in the center of a boxing ring where the ropes are moving and the opponent keeps changing shape. The significant accumulation of forward moving energy is going to be heavily concentrated in your seventh house of partnerships, relationships, and the mirror of another. And this is pushed by Mars entering Aries on April 9th alongside with the new moon on the 17th. And so physically, you could feel a constant, stimulating, and sometimes demanding pressure coming from outside of yourself. Maybe you feel as though other people, or maybe specific external circumstances, or even your one on one partnerships are directing an active energy straight at you. And so your nervous system could be on alert. Maybe you're reacting to direct communications, a lot of demands, or maybe you just have the need to assert your own identity within a dynamic that feels lopsided. And this fast paced relational energy could continually hit a steady wall of Saturn, which peaks during the conjunction of Mars, Mercury, and Saturn in Aries between the 19th and 20th, which creates a sensation of maybe being blocked or stalled by the very people you were trying to connect with, requiring that you find a considerable amount of internal balance. And then as the energy transitions into Taurus, with Taurus season coming on the 19th, and your eighth house of transformation and shared resources, this sensation will shift from fast relational kind of ping-ponging energy or intense energy to a steady pull towards psychological merging and deliberate security within your bonds or deep entanglements. However, this grounded settling could be promptly shifted on April 25th by Uranus entering your ninth house of higher learning, travel, and belief systems, which is supported by Venus also entering Gemini on April 23rd. And so the mental atmosphere could become lively and unpredictable. Maybe your worldview, your educational pursuits, and your desire for expansive experience could undergo a lot of innovation, encouraging you to reassess how you think about your place in the wider world. And so, this friction between relational demands and intellectual expansion could manifest in so many ways, either as external events or maybe just quiet internal realizations, could be either. And so, first, maybe triggered by the April 17th new moon in Aries, you could face an external confrontational situation, or maybe a business partner, a spouse, a close collaborator, a one on one partnership, or even just your idea of partnership feels a little bit impulsive. Maybe other people are pushing an agenda onto you, or maybe you feel like you need to establish a boundary with how you connect with people in general due to maybe, how they are acting onto you. And as a necessary counterbalance to this external force, you really must draw upon the April 1st full moon in your own sign of Libra to kind of help you through this, because while your instinct might be to emotionally absorb their demands, heightened by Jupiter in Cancer, the full moon's trine to Pluto really empowers you to take a transformed, unbiased perspective on who you are, allowing you to diplomatically but firmly surrender the need to constantly compromise your autonomy and who you are for other people's comfort. Alternatively, this energy could manifest as a whisper from within. You could be forced to inwardly confront your own emotional wounds regarding how you assert yourself, which is illuminated by the Sun conjoining with Chiron in Aries on the 16th. And maybe you need to crystallize a disciplined emotional boundary of your own, learning to balance fairness with clear self-advocacy. Secondly, maybe sparked by the swift April 14th Mercury in Aries transit, this could play out as maybe an internal relational shift. You could experience a meaningful change in your mindset regarding your one-on-one connections that makes your current seventh house partnerships feel either misaligned or outdated. And on an external level, you could feel an urge to take direct action in the real world to renegotiate the terms of maybe, how you connect with other people in general. And maybe this could bleed into your shared resources or how you intimately bond with others. And you could find yourself communicating new psychological boundaries as Taurus season grounds in your 8th house. Thirdly, during the April 25th Sun in Taurus square Pluto in Aquarius transit may be a sudden power struggle regarding a passion project, a creative endeavor, or an issue with a romantic partner or a child could occur. It could occur internally or externally, and this could really challenge the psychological and emotional security that you rely on when you do bond intimately with another person or with, a passion project. And this could require you to utilize an objective inner perspective to regulate your emotions at this time so that you can change your practical approach to how you approach shared finances or emotional commitments or intimacy or the deep psychological parts of who you are. And so the primary challenge for you this month is the risk of losing your own energetic center by constantly reacting to external forces outside of yourself, or becoming so focused on relational harmony that you suppress your own necessary evolution. And if you act hastily based on someone else's timeline, or if you stubbornly cling to an outdated worldview because it feels safer than the unknown, you could experience mental tension or relational fatigue. But the significant opportunity available to you this month is the chance to meaningfully rebuild how you assert yourself in partnerships, how you view yourself, and how you can expand your horizons. This is the time to take Saturnian responsibility for your role in how you give yourself to other people. You can heal the parts of you that feel hesitant or afraid, or the parts of you that really don't want to be unbalanced when you stand up for yourself. You can really maintain that balance and that sort of, respect for yourself at the same time. And do not make impulsive relationship decisions at this time, but do crystallize exactly what you will and will not tolerate. And then as Uranus updates your sector of higher learning, your ultimate strategy is to become a curious sponge for new unconventional information. Start studying a new philosophy, a language, or a field of thought right now. And if you can maintain your internal emotional equilibrium while allowing your external relationships and your overarching belief systems to evolve, you could master the art of dynamic, truly equal dynamics within your life that could really help you for years to come. Scorpio Rising. April begins with a quiet but potent precursor for the main event of the month, because the April 1st full moon in Libra will softly illuminate your 12th house of the subconscious and spirituality and the unseen, really demanding a moment of internal harmony before the daily demands of your life are going to consume you a little bit more. And this lunation will be making a square to an emotional Jupiter in Cancer, which could stir up feelings regarding maybe your beliefs. Maybe there's this subconscious block that is maybe, blocking you from having this expansive view of the world that you want, or vice versa. But there is going to be a trine to Pluto in Aquarius to this full moon. So unbiased examination of your hidden psychological patterns will provide this amazing opportunity for a restorative counterbalance. And you will need this rest and this deep evaluation because the atmospheric pressure of the rest of April could feel like operating a complex piece of machinery that is running at an accelerated pace, which could threaten to tire your physical body in some way. Maybe you could feel burned out. And so the majority of the month's forward moving energy is going to be focused in your sixth house of health, daily routines, and day to day work, because Mars will be entering Aries on the 9th, and there will be a new moon in Aries on April 17th as well. And so physically, you could feel a surge of active energy demanding that you tackle your to-do list. Maybe you need to address physical ailments at this time or proactively organize your immediate environment. However, this forward-moving drive to do and to fix could meet the structural gears of Saturn, which culminates in April 19th to the 20th with a conjunction of Mars, Mercury, and Saturn together. And this could create a somatic sensation of maybe physical exhaustion, energetic stagnation, or you could just hit logistical roadblocks in your daily life that test your bodily endurance in some way. And your physical vessel can be under demand, and this atmosphere around your daily grind could feel very direct and very potent at this time. But as we move into Taurus season on the 19th, your seventh house of partnerships will be activated, which could bring a shift towards seeking stability, deliberate grounding, and methodical comfort through how you connect with other people. Yet, this relational grounded space could be promptly shifted on the 25th as Uranus pushes its way into your eighth house of transformation, shared resources, and psychological depths, which is preceded by Venus also entering Gemini on the 23rd. And so the atmosphere of your intimate bonds or financial entanglements could become electric and unpredictable. And so, this physical momentum colliding with psychological and financial shifts could manifest very specifically, acting as either external events or deep internal shifts. Remember, it could play out either way. And so, first, brought to a head by the forward moving April 17th new moon in Aries, you could experience an external disruption in your day to day environment, such as a sudden influx of direct communications at work. Maybe you have a new physical responsibility, or you could have, some burnout or a health matter that surfaces purely due to your overexertion. And so, to navigate this physical period, if it happens, that April 1st Libra full moon in your 12th house kind of acts as this counterbalance that you really need to tune into. And so, even if your daily stressors trigger emotional anxieties, the full moon's trine to Pluto will allow you to surrender to a fair, balanced period of rest if you allow that rest to really, dominate sort of your body and your mind, ensuring that you do not let the external demands disrupt your inner peace. Alternatively, though, this pressure could be just a whisper from within. It doesn't have to be external. It could require you to inwardly confront past emotional wounds regarding your ability to manage your energy, which is highlighted by the Sun conjunction to Chiron in Aries on the 16th, which encourages you to formulate a new mindset that allows you to structure a disciplined daily routine that prioritizes your limits over your drive to produce. Secondly, though, sparked by an intuitive April 16th Mercury conjunct Neptune transit, this could manifest as an internal shift. You could experience a clear realization regarding an unhelpful day to day routine, a physical health pattern, or an unspoken stressor that you harbor within that sixth house work environment. On a physical level, this energy could compel you to take practical action as well, maybe regarding how you approach routine. And this could somehow maybe even tie to your, one-on-one partnerships with that shift into Taurus season. And this could maybe, push you to maybe need to rely on others or to find a grounding force in your life and to ground how you commit to people with that seventh house energy kind of blending with that sixth house energy. And then thirdly, under the complex April 25th Sun in Taurus, square Pluto and Aquarius transit may be a disruption or a power struggle within your foundational home life, your innermost self, your family dynamics, or your literal home could occur. Or this tangible shift could arise more internally, which could challenge the deliberate emotional security you are attempting to psychologically build with other people in your life. Maybe you feel that it is, stressful being vulnerable, and this could require you to utilize an objective inner perspective to adapt your internal sense of control so that you can subsequently change your practical actions to navigate the new reality without burning yourself out. And so the specific challenge for you this month is the potential for physical fatigue or nervous system stimulation caused by an attempt to micromanage unpredictable forces. And because you naturally investigate and seek depth, your Scorpio rising, the swift changes occurring in your eighth house and within your sixth house as well could push you towards maybe mental tension or a reluctance to adapt, especially given the empathetic rush on April 26th with Mercury squaring Jupiter. And so, if you force action when your body is signaling for rest, or if you cling rigidly to outdated power dynamics within your relationships, this could be an exhausting month for you. But the deep opportunity here is to master the art of physical discipline and psychological adaptability. This is the moment to take Saturnian responsibility for your physical vessel. Use the roadblocks in your daily life not as a source of frustration, although it is very easy to do so, but as a mandatory cue to pace yourself and heal any wounds around your physical confidence. And then, as Uranus updates your psychological and financial sector, your best strategy is to embrace curiosity rather than suspicion when it comes to the deepest parts of your life. Start learning new, innovative ways to manage shared resources, communicate your vulnerabilities, or you can utilize, unconventional methods when it comes to your financial planning. This is a good time to, start learning about investing if that's something you're curious about. And so, if you can balance a disciplined daily routine with an open approach to how you merge with the forces that kind of, challenge you psychologically, you could meaningfully transform your internal power and your external resilience on a whole new level. For my Sagittarius rising, right out of the gate, the April 1st full moon in Libra lights up your 11th house of community and goals. It represents your role in society, your networks, and it asks you to find a fair balance between your solo passions and your role in society, or like the bigger picture. This could represent your audience in some cases as well. And because this full moon makes a square to an emotional Jupiter in Cancer, you could feel like maybe your psychological bonds, your deepest fears, something regarding your shared resources, or at least, your relationship with life and death could be clashing in some way with your social desires. Take what resonates with that. A good example of that would be like, oh, a fear of rejection. I think that would be, how you could tie the eighth house and 11th house. But with the trine of Pluto and Aquarius to this full moon, it promises a transformed perspective on your friendships and your goals. And this requires a surrendering of your ego and interacting with your networks or, larger groups through an unbiased and diplomatic lens. And so this moon could offer a supportive collective anchor, and you will need this, grounding when it comes to your role in society or how you connect with larger networks, because the sensation of the rest of April could feel like navigating a fast paced environment with intermittent delays while lively developments are simultaneously occurring around you. And so the significant concentration of forward moving energy for the month will be piled into your fifth house of creativity, pleasure, self expression, romance, and children. And this is ignited by Mars entering Aries on the 9th and the fiery new moon in Aries on the 17th. And so you could feel a clear somatic surge of passion, a warmth in your chest, and an urge to express yourself, create something new, or to pursue joy and romance on a very bold and individual level. And that atmosphere can feel expressive and playful, pushing you to take brave, creative risks in whatever area of life resonates with you. However, this creative fire can meet the grounded reality of Saturn, feeling like almost as block maybe during the April 19th and 20th conjunction of Mars, Mercury, and Saturn in Aries, which could create a sensation of maybe a creative hurdle, an energetic delay, or heavy responsibilities that maybe stall your pursuit of pleasure, requiring that you take your passions more seriously. And as the sun moves into Taurus on the 19th, this will activate your sixth house of health and routine. And the sensation will shift noticeably. Maybe your body will crave steady grounding. It will ask you to materialize your creative ideas, maybe into your practical daily habits in some way. But this desire for a steady routine could be promptly shifted almost on the 25th as Uranus enters your seventh house of partnerships and one on one connections. But also, Venus is entering Gemini on the 23rd. So, this is going to come as a package deal, at least initially. And so, the atmosphere of your relationships could become lively in some way, buzzing with new frequencies. And so, this is energy you can pay attention to. And so, this friction between creative urges, daily physical grounding, and sudden relational electricity could manifest in a few scenarios, acting as either external events or quiet internal realizations. Could go either way. And so the first transit I want to talk about for scenarios, it could revolve around the April 19th to 20th conjunction of Mars, Mercury, and Saturn in Aries, kind of paired up with the new moon in Aries. You could experience an external situation where a romantic partner, a creative collaborator, or even a child, maybe somebody that you connect with on a fun and more playful level, or something with a creative passion as well. Maybe this demands attention or presents a sudden responsibility that kind of stalls your personal freedom. Maybe you reach a roadblock of sorts. But this is where the April 1st full moon in Libra in your 11th house of community is going to serve as a supportive counterbalance. You really need to embrace this full moon if you want to be ready, because while the block to your individual joy could make you feel a little bit emotional, the full moon's trine to Pluto invites you to step back and view the situation fairly through the lens of, the bigger picture, your broader friendships, maybe, the way that society's going and working. Like, step back and zoom out the lens and surrender your ego to find diplomatic support within your network or within social media, rather than navigating whatever creative blocks you are facing alone. Alternatively, this could manifest as a whisper from within, maybe prompting you to inwardly confront your own emotional wounds around how you express yourself with society or with friends or larger groups, which is going to be brought to a head by the Sun conjuncting with Chiron in Aries on the 16th. And this could call you to crystallize a disciplined, mature emotional boundary regarding how much psychological energy you instinctually give away versus how much you keep for your own joy. Secondly, sparked by a quick April 14th Mercury in Aries transit, this could play out as an internal creative or romantic epiphany of sorts. Maybe you experience a clear realization about a new creative medium you want to explore, or a shift in what you deeply desire when it comes to romance or play. And externally, you could be compelled to make changes in the real world to your daily routines and tangible work habits as Taurus season deliberately stabilizes your sixth house, potentially modifying your established order to accommodate this new desire, because the fifth house kind of precedes the sixth house. And so whatever happens with the fifth house for you is going to kind of be crystallized by that sixth house Taurus season transit. And then thirdly, during the April 25th Sun in Taurus square Pluto in Aquarius transit, maybe a sudden disruption to your local environment, a piece of communication, maybe, a thought pattern or a power struggle in your immediate environment could occur. Alternatively, though, this unpredictability could be purely internal, feeling like a challenge to the slow, steady emotional peace and mental health protocols that you rely on for bodily security. And this could require you to utilize an objective inner perspective to regulate your expectations and subsequently change your practical schedule to deliberately kind of fit, maybe the chaos or the new insights that are coming through your immediate environment. The primary friction for you during this month is the risk of depleting your creative energy by acting on every passionate urge without securing a foundation, or conversely, you could become so frustrated by the Saturnian delays that you completely abandon your joy. And if you allow the rapid changes in your relationships or the responsibilities within your creative life to cause you to maybe act without tact or speaking without thinking, especially under the friction of the April 26th, the Mercury square Jupiter transit, you could create friction. But the significant opportunity available for you this month is the chance to master the discipline of creation and to reinvent how you relate to others. This is an excellent time to take serious responsibility for your talents. Use the roadblocks that you face as a cue to maybe refine how you create, how you have fun, or your romantic approach, rather than, just abandoning something because you don't think it's worth your time or that it won't work out. And as Uranus updates your seventh house, your ultimate strategy is to remain curious and adaptable regarding who you connect with and how you connect with them. This is not the time to cling to traditional relationship structures if they feel stifling. Instead, learn a new way of communicating to others, embrace unconventional dynamics, and allow your connections, whether platonic or romantic, to be spaces of mutual learning. And if you can balance disciplined creativity this month with an open approach to how you connect, you could construct a life that is both deeply secure and actively evolving, which can really help to push you far in so many areas of your life. Capricorn Risings, providing a highly visible starting point for you for the month. This April 1st full moon in Libra is illuminating your 10th house of career and public image, regardless of where your midheaven is, which really requires you to maintain professional harmony or, a balanced perspective on your ambitions at the very least before you dive into private restructuring, as the 4th house is going to be heavily activated for you this month. And so the square from this full moon to an emotional Jupiter in Cancer could heighten your feelings regarding, how you connect to people versus, your ambitions. Maybe it creates friction between what you want to achieve in life and how you maybe, connect with people. Maybe you think that your ability to connect with people is hindering you, or maybe there are, people in your workplace who are challenging you on a different level at this time. But with a trine to Pluto to this full moon, this offers a transformed perspective on maybe your resources or your autonomy. And so if you can view your public standing fairly and unbiased and surrender the need for absolute control, whether you're looking for a career or you're already in your career or climbing the ladder, whatever it may be, this lunation will help you navigate with diplomatic grace as long as you are open-minded. But this grace, trust me when I say it is necessary, because the overarching somatic experience of April could feel like attempting to renovate the foundation of your home, your innermost self. While a lively gathering is occurring in your living room, it could feel very vulnerable, but very private at the same time. And the concentration of forward moving energy is going to be rooted in your 4th house of home, family, roots, and your innermost psychological foundation, because Mars will be entering Aries on the 9th, and this is going to kind of peak with the new moon in Aries on the 17th. And so physically, you could feel a firm pressure at the core of your being. There could be a surge of energy pushing you to take action, maybe regarding your living situation, your family dynamics, or your emotional security. You might want to overhaul things from the inside out. However, this instinctual drive to assert yourself at home or to heal ancestral patterns, however this resonates, could meet the steady force of your ruling planet of Saturn, especially during the demanding April 19th to 20th conjunction of Mars, Mercury, and Saturn in the sign of Aries, which could create a sensation of maybe feeling stuck, emotionally stalled. Maybe you're burdened by familial or domestic responsibilities that demand patience. Maybe there's like a lease being delayed, or roommates being not so pleasant. Could just be internal. Take what resonates. But then as the energy shifts into Taurus on the 19th and into your 5th house of creativity and pleasure, because we got Taurus season coming up, your focus could seek relief. You could feel a pull to steadily ground yourself in what brings you joy. You could seek deliberate stability and comfort through creative expression or romance. You may want to tap into your inner child or just learn to have fun more. Yet this pursuit of stable pleasure could be promptly shifted on the 25th, as Uranus will push its way into your 6th house of health, daily routine, and day-to-day work. And this could be supported, though, because Venus is also moving into Gemini 2 days earlier on the 23rd. And so the atmosphere of your daily grind is about to become dynamic and buzzing with change. This could be a very transformative month for you. And so this pressure at the core of your life colliding kind of with the sudden electricity in your daily routines could manifest in a few ways, either externally or internally. Could be either. First, kind of driven by the April 17th new moon in Aries, you could face maybe an external disruption in your home life. Maybe sudden repairs are needed, there's conflict with family members, or a domestic responsibility that requires action. These are just external manifestations. And if this does happen, if you want to navigate this properly, the April 1st to Libra full moon in your 10th house is going to be that stabilizing counterbalance. This is the key for the month. And so while the domestic disruption could trigger your emotional foundation, the full moon's trine to the Pluto could allow you to maintain a fair, balanced, and diplomatic, presence where you can just, focus on your goals, go after them, go after what it is you desire. And this could help you surrender the need for perfect control within your home or innermost self by drawing strength from your objective public goals or achievements. You're looking at where you want to be. Alternatively, though, this turbulence could manifest as a whisper from within. It could be internal, encouraging you to inwardly sit with emotional wounds, maybe regarding your inner sense of safety. And this will be illuminated by the Sun conjunct Chiron in Aries transit on the 16th. And belonging ultimately requires you to really build a disciplined emotional boundary to protect your innermost self. Secondly, though, sparked by the blurred boundaries that could take place on April 12th with the Mars conjunct Neptune transit, this could manifest as an internal psychological shift. You could experience a clear inner realization about an ingrained childhood pattern or a sudden emotional shift in what you need to feel fundamentally secure. But on an external level as well, kind of like bleeding into this period could compel you to make swift changes in the real world by, channeling it through your creative pursuits or your romantic life, especially as Taurus season begins on the 19th, perhaps deciding to prioritize that fifth house self-expression or to adopt steady, tangible new hobbies or sense of childlike joy to support your new psychological state. Thirdly, under the April 25th Sun in Taurus square, Pluto and Aquarius transit may be a sudden disruption, or maybe even, a tangible power struggle regarding your personal finances, your bank account, or your material resources. Something like this could occur. This could also be, maybe a test regarding your self-worth. And maybe this sudden shift could arise purely internally. It doesn't have to be externally, directly challenging the steady psychological joy and emotional creative security you are trying to cultivate inside. And so this could require you to utilize an objective inner perspective to release the firm grip of how things should be done so that you can subsequently change your practical approach to your daily skills without losing your sense of joy or fun or pleasure. And so the specific challenge for you this month is the risk of becoming so fatigued by the sudden disruptions to your planned routines or the emotional pressure at home that you could end up shutting down in some way. You could become very rigid, very fatigued. And because you rely on results and structure, the swift changes into how you must operate daily could lead to nervous system tension and a reluctance to adapt, especially around the 26th as Mercury squares Jupiter, which could cause you to react defensively towards those who are closest to you. But the deepest opportunity this month is to utilize the concentrated energy of your fourth house to perform structural, lasting healing on your psychological foundation, taking true mature responsibility for your emotional needs rather than just your external achievements. And when you hit domestic or emotional roadblocks, use them to crystallize your boundaries, not build your walls. And as Uranus updates your sector of health and daily work, your ultimate strategy is to embrace mental and physical flexibility alongside a curious investigative approach to your daily tasks. And you must stop trying to force old routines into a new paradigm. Start learning maybe a new skill or new technology for your job. Experiment with innovative or out-of-the-box health practices. You don't have to do the same workout every day. That's a really good example. And allow your daily life to become an experiment rather than a rigid schedule, because if you can balance the disciplined restructuring of your emotional core with an adaptable approach to your daily grind, you could achieve a level of resilient security that you have never known that could carry you into the next phase of your life. For my Aquarius risings, before maybe a lot of mentally busy activity takes over, the month will open up with the April 1st full moon in Libra, expanding your vision by illuminating your ninth house of higher learning, travel. It's how you expand your horizons, and it urges you to find philosophical balance or fairness above the immediate noise that could be happening in your life. And while the square to Jupiter in Cancer to this full moon may stir up emotions regarding your daily routines or your health, maybe there's something that's like dissatisfying your thirst for adventure within your routines, there is going to be a trine to Pluto to this full moon, which offers a transformed perspective on your core identity as long as you can keep that balanced mindset. And by embracing the art of surrender and viewing your grandest belief systems with that unbiased fairness, this lunation can act as a vital big picture anchor for you for the month. And armed with this wider view, the atmosphere of the rest of April could feel like you're processing a large influx of mental data while simultaneously trying to navigate a complex environment. And this significant accumulation of forward moving energy will be concentrated in your third house of communication, mindset, and your local environment, prompted by Mars entering Aries on the 9th and the new moon in Aries on the 17th. And so physically, your nervous system could feel highly stimulated at this time, and you could experience a surge of quick thoughts, maybe an urgency to speak, learn, or boldly push your ideas into your immediate surroundings in some way. And the atmosphere could be quite active and filled with a lot of communications. Maybe you have a lot of errands to complete, or there could just be an influx of mental data and noise. You could just be thinking a lot as well. However, this active mental energy could meet the solid boundary of Saturn, which kind of manifests as a pause, especially between the 19th and 20th conjunction of Mars, Mercury, and Saturn, which could create a sensation of mental stalling. And you could feel the urge to move quickly or to really, move on your thoughts, only to hit maybe communicative roadblocks, technological delays, or the realization that you must take serious disciplined responsibility for every word you say. Maybe it's kind of hard to, put your ideas into words at this time. It requires a lot of, effort. And as the energy moves into Taurus season around the 19th and into your fourth house of home and roots, the physical sensation will kind of demand a downshift. Your body at this time could crave steady grounding within your private space or within your, what makes you feel safe. And you could seek to deliberately materialize security away from the local noise at this time. But this domestic setting could be promptly shifted around the 25th as your modern ruling planet of Uranus enters your fifth house of creativity, self expression, romance, and pleasure, introduced by Venus entering Gemini only 2 days prior. And so the atmosphere surrounding your passions is about to become electric and unpredictable at the same time. And so the friction between active communication, the need for domestic grounding, and sudden creative electricity could manifest in a few ways, either externally or it could just be internally. Transits can play out as both. And so, first, triggered by the April 17th new moon in Aries, you could experience an external influx of information in the real world. Maybe your inbox fills with a lot of emails. Maybe somebody really asserts themselves through a communication, or there could just be a local community issue that requires your direct intervention in some way. And so, to prevent mental overload from this localized noise, if this is how it shows up for you, that April 1st Libra full moon in your ninth house of higher learning will act as a necessary counterbalance. And although the immediate demands could trigger emotional frustration, amplified by Jupiter in Cancer, the full moon's trine to Pluto will allow you to step back and to adopt a fair, unbiased big picture perspective, surrendering the need to react to every minor detail by focusing on your broader transformed philosophies. But alternatively, the noise of these moons could be a whisper from within, encouraging you to inwardly confront your emotional wounds regarding intellectual confidence, brought to light by the Sun conjoining with Chiron in Aries on the 16th, and the fear of being misunderstood, ultimately pushing you to internally structure disciplined mental boundaries and communicate with careful precision rather than speed. Secondly, sparked by the quick April 14th Mercury in Aries transit, this could play out as an internal psychological epiphany regarding your mindset or your communication style. You could experience a sudden mental download about a new way of thinking or a timely message you need to share within your immediate surroundings. And on a physical level, you could be compelled compelled to take direct action in the real world to change your domestic space or maybe your foundational roots, as Taurus season will ground in your fourth house. Maybe you decide to build a steady, peaceful home sanctuary, or you work on some childhood trauma. It could play out a few ways. And then thirdly, during the complex April 25th Sun in Taurus, square Pluto in Aquarius transit may be a sudden external force or a power struggle challenging, your autonomy, your personal identity, or how you operate in the world could occur. But alternatively, this sudden shift could manifest internally, maybe challenging the slow, methodical, psychological sense of, emotional and domestic security you're trying to build internally, maybe from your past or within your private life in some way, which requires you to utilize an objective inner perspective to internally regulate your nervous system so that you can subsequently change your physical surroundings to integrate this dynamic energy without disrupting your steady inner foundation. And so the specific challenge for you this month is the real potential of mental fatigue, maybe information overload, and speaking impulsively that could cause friction within your immediate environment. And because you naturally possess, an innovative, detached, rapid mind, the acceleration of data combined with the Saturnian delays this month could lead to nervous system tension or intellectual rigidity where you become hesitant to listen to others, especially with the Mercury square Jupiter transit on the 26th, which could, cause a lot of emotions within your thoughts. Your thoughts and your emotions will be at odds at this time. And if you try to force new ungrounded ideas while your brain is exhausted, you could deplete your focus. But the opportunity available to you this month is the chance to really master the discipline of communication and to liberate your creative spirit. And this is a moment to take Saturnian responsibility for your mindset. Use the mental roadblocks as a necessary filter to ensure that your ideas are actually sound before you assert them. And as Uranus updates your sector of joy and self-expression, your ultimate strategy is to remain curious and adaptable regarding what makes you happy. And this is an excellent time to start a new creative skill, a new language of self-expression. Maybe if you haven't been dating, go on a date, or if you are in a relationship, spice it up a little bit. Do not feel pressured to create the way you always have. And if you can balance a disciplined, careful approach to how you communicate your thoughts with an open, experimental approach to your passions and your pleasures, you could unlock a new level of intellectual and creative insight that could carry you so far, not only throughout the month, but for the months to come. And for my Pisces risings, right at the inception of the month, we will be having a full moon in Libra on the 1st, which plunges into your 8th house of transformation and shared resources, really demanding that you balance your personal assets, your sense of worth, with the energetic debts you owe others before tackling logistical challenges. I'm a Leo rising. I want to say right now, I'm dealing with a lot of 8th house transits right now. And so when I say energetic debts, this could mean, relying on other people a little bit too much, even for like decision making or like having them weigh on your mind a little bit too much. And so this lunation as well makes a square with an emotional Jupiter in Cancer, which could cause your creative joys or your romantic passions in some way to clash with psychological merging. There could be a sense of vulnerability around what brings you joy at this time. But with a trine to Pluto to this full moon, this provides a transformed perspective on your unseen fears. And so if you can surrender to a fair, unbiased review of your deepest entanglements, this moon will offer the exact emotional clarity that you need. And this clarity is essential this month, trust me, because the overall atmospheric pressure of April could feel like managing a growing set of responsibilities while navigating a bustling information exchange. It could be very busy for you. And so the active energy of the month is going to be concentrated in your 2nd house of possessions, self-esteem, values, and resources, which is fueled by Mars entering Aries on the 9th and with the new moon in Aries on April 17th. And so physically, you could feel a clear urgency regarding either your finances, your security, your skills, your self-worth. And there can be a strong push to assert your worth in some way or to take action regarding your skills or your income. Or maybe you need to spend or acquire a lot of things at this time for whatever reason. and the atmosphere around your resources could feel very demanding. However, this drive to materialize could meet a restrictive and steady energy of Saturn, which could feel like a financial hurdle, or maybe a hurdle with your skills or your self worth. And this will take place especially around the 19th and 20th with a conjunction of Mars, Mercury, and Saturn, which could create a sensation of financial or material delay. Maybe you could hit logistical roadblocks, maybe delays in income, or the realization that you have to take disciplined, mature responsibility for your resources to maybe get what you want rather than relying solely on hope or waiting for the perfect timing. And then as the sun moves into Taurus on the 19th, your third house of communication and local environment will also be activated, which does shift your focus towards a steady, practical understanding of your situation through a more mental, methodical, and grounded perspective. Maybe conversations bring things to light, or maybe you're just really trying to ground your mind at this time. And yet, this steady mental stabilization could be promptly shifted on the 25th as Uranus will finally push its way, at least for the next 7 years, into your fourth house of home, family, roots, and innermost self, which is amplified by Venus also entering Gemini just 2 days prior. And so, this material pressure colliding with this almost sense of foundational electricity could manifest in a few scenarios, presenting as either external events. This could be external, but it could also just be deeply internal. Not everything is a big event. And so, first, culminating during this April 17th new moon in Aries, you could face an external financial situation in the real world, maybe an unexpected expense, a delay in the paycheck, or a conflict regarding your personal property or physical boundaries, or maybe there's something regarding your self-worth that is surfaced through an external event. And the material matter is precisely why the April 1st Libra full moon in your 8th house of shared resources will act as a vital psychological counterbalance. No matter what happens during the new moon in Aries, you need that balance to be established early in the month so that you're ready. And so when financial stress or material stress could make you feel, a little bit emotionally ungrounded, the full moon's trine to Pluto will empower you to take a transformed, unbiased look at what you owe and what is owed to you, allowing you to diplomatically surrender outdated attachments rather than panicking over a temporary lack of control. And that is how you can really get your, stuff together when these second house transits hit. But alternatively, this pressure could manifest as a whisper from within. You could be encouraged to inwardly sit with deeply ingrained emotional wounds regarding your inner self-worth, which is illuminated by the Sun conjunct Chiron transit on the 16th. And maybe your ability to support yourself and what you need to do that, it could finally be realized at this time, or you could, take the steps to work towards that, which does require you to crystallize a new disciplined inner framework for how you value your own emotional energy and learning to separate your psychological self-esteem from your bank account or maybe the tangible things that you own right now. And then, secondly, sparked by an intuitive April 16th Mercury conjunct Neptune transit, this transit could manifest as an internal shift at the core of your being. You could experience a psychological breakthrough regarding difficult financial dynamics or a realization that your current material values in your second house could be stifling your self esteem. And on an external level, this energy could compel you to take practical action in the real world regarding your mindset or your local environment, especially as that sun shifts from Aries into Taurus. You could feel that transition. Maybe you decide to communicate your needs or to learn a practical third house skill to fund an unconventional move or to, increase your worth in some way. And then thirdly, under the April 25th Sun in Taurus square Pluto and Aquarius transit, maybe a sudden disruption or unseen power struggle could manifest in the real world from a resurfaced maybe ancestral issue, or maybe there's a familial issue that resurfaces, or an inner issue that's triggered by an outside source. Or this hidden shift could just simply arise internally, maybe directly challenging the slow mindset and stable inner sense of security that you're trying to build. Maybe something subconsciously starts to surface, which requires you to utilize an objective inner perspective to manage your emotionally absorbing tendencies as a Pisces rising. And so you can subsequently change your material actions and practical communications to safely navigate this psychological change at this time. And so for you, the primary friction for you this month is the risk of allowing sudden fears or unexpected, domestic or innermost turbulence to overwhelm your nervous system, leading to maybe hasty financial actions or a stagnant state where you avoid taking responsibility for your reality. And with Mars conjoining your ruling planet of Neptune peaking on the 12th, the boundaries between what you truly value and what you are merely absorbing from your environment are going to become a little bit blurred. Maybe you could act on ungrounded financial urges, especially with Mercury square Jupiter. Do not impulsively spend, and this could be counterproductive, but this is probably what you want to know, what the opportunity of the month for you is. It's to master the physical discipline of your resources and to reinvent your emotional foundation. This is the time to take Saturnian responsibility for your self-worth, for your bank account, for your skills. Use financial roadblocks not as punishments or as, indicators of what you're worth, but as mandatory lessons in mastery. I have a North Node in my second house. Every lesson you take is mandatory. And as Uranus updates your deepest sector of home and roots, your best strategy is really to remain curious and emotionally adaptable. And you must let go of that idea that security looks like a traditional, unchanging fortress. You can be adaptable and safe. And so start learning new ways to cultivate inner peace, embrace unconventional living situations, and allow your definition of home to become flexible. Because if you can balance a disciplined approach to your material reality with an open, adaptable approach to your psychological foundation, you could build a life. And this is the month where this could kind of, peak, that is practically secure, but also emotionally free, that could carry you in the future for years to come. For my Aries Suns, April brings a concentrated focus to your sense of self and your natural drive. And so the month will kick off on April 1st with a full moon in Libra, which asks your instinctual drive to find a little equilibrium with your external circumstances. It's about balancing your individual momentum with moments that call for diplomacy. And by April 9th, when Mars enters Aries, you could feel a noticeable surge into your core energy, encouraging your action oriented nature. You could feel more energetic. And this momentum will continue as well as the Sun conjoins with Chiron on the 16th, followed by the new moon in Aries on the 17th. And this brings a pivotal moment for how you see yourself, offering a beautiful opportunity to address any past moments where your confidence has stalled and to initiate a fresh start. However, as we reach April 19th and 20th, the presence of Saturn will act as a gentle moderating force to this heavy Aries energy. This isn't necessarily a blockage, it's rather just more so an invitation to structure your energy to avoid that burnout that is so easy to achieve, I feel like these days, through, making too impulsive of actions or decisions. But then later, as Mercury in your sign squares with Jupiter in Cancer on the 26th, your thoughts as well could feel quick and urgent around this time, and your inner spark really benefits from pausing at this time just to ensure that your actions align with a genuine sense of meaning. And so ultimately, this month asks you to refine the way that you project who you are, ensuring your dynamic energy is both brave and grounded at the same time. Taurus Suns, this April, your steady, methodical, and grounded nature is the central focus of some significant cosmic movement. And so early in the month, your core energy will be deeply intertwined with the transit of your ruling planet, Venus, as it squares Pluto. And this dynamic could challenge your core need for stability, asking you to adapt to changes that feel outside of your immediate control. But as the Sun enters Taurus on the 19th, it will replenish your natural drive, highlighting your wonderful ability to materialize your desires and root yourself in reality. But things can get interesting a few days later because Venus will be conjoining with Uranus in your sign on the 23rd. And so your usual methodical nature could experience a sudden urge to break the mold or to redefine what actually brings you security. And this is a period to balance your practical side with some necessary evolution. And when the Sun in Taurus makes a square to Pluto in Aquarius on the 25th, you could feel an intense pressure between maintaining your grounded routines and embracing a more detached detached outside perspective that demands revolution or transformation. And so your vitality this month is best sustained by avoiding stubbornness and allowing yourself to gently evolve. The key to navigating this month for you is recognizing that adaptability doesn't have to threaten your security, and by remaining open to new approaches, you protect your inner spark while gracefully integrating the shifts that are reshaping your everyday reality. Gemini Suns, April introduces some deep shifts that could directly stimulate your clever, investigative, and curious spirit. Earlier in the month, the heavy concentration of planets in Aries, including Mercury, Mars, and the Sun, will accelerate your mental environment. And while your mind enjoys brainstorming, usually the conjunctions with Neptune and Saturn to the Aries transits could suggest a need to pace yourself at this time. And so just ensure that your communications and the fast paced ideas that you absorb this month are rooted in reality rather than confusion. And then as we move later in the month, your life force will receive a significant boost as both Venus and Uranus will enter your sign. And on the 23rd, with Venus entering Gemini, this will shift or at least bring, attention to your core values and passions. And it especially brings them towards a more informational plane. And it can invigorate you through maybe learning, communication, and social exchange, allowing you to really thrive when gathering new data and sharing ideas. And then shortly after, the entry of Uranus into Gemini on the 25th marks the beginning of a longer cycle of awakening for your sense of self. And your naturally investigative nature could experience sudden insights or a supercharged spark regarding your personal passions. And this energy really encourages you to express yourself in entirely new, perhaps unconventional ways. And this month, your energy is best maintained by feeding your curiosity with, substantial information while allowing yourself the freedom to explore new perspectives without burning out your nervous system. Cancer Suns. Throughout April, your intuitive, empathetic, and passion driven nature is called to navigate some intense emotional and energetic currents. This month begins powerfully with the full moon in Libra on the 1st, which will square Jupiter in Cancer, which will bring emotional intensity to the forefront of your awareness. And your empathetic nature could feel a little bit heightened at this time, asking you to balance your deep internal feelings and the external demands for harmony that you may face. And then moving into the middle of the month, the heavy Aries energy, particularly the Sun and Chiron conjunction, may indirectly test your confidence or the ways you protect your sensitivity. However, looking at this as an opportunity to strengthen who you are by learning to assert your passions constructively. That is the key. And then as Mercury in Aries squares with Jupiter in your sign on the 26th, you could experience a tension between rapid, blunt information and your need for emotional safety. And this transit really challenges you to process fast insights without becoming overwhelmed. And your inner spark is sustained by sitting with this tension and allowing your intuition to guide your responses rather than reacting out of fear, and by honoring your empathetic nature while establishing healthy boundaries against impulsive forces, you can maintain your energy this month and emerge from the month feeling more resilient and authentic to yourself. Leo Suns, this April, the astrological landscape will fully interact with your expressive, creative, or virtuous spirit. And so the month will open up with the full moon in Libra on the 1st, which invites your expressive side, no matter how expressive you are, to consider balance and fairness, really harmonizing your personal light and your sense of creativity and authenticity with outside and balanced perspectives. And as we move towards the middle of the month, a strong concentration of Aries energy, including the Sun, Mars, and Mercury, will resonate beautifully with your dynamic nature, and it potentially provides a lovely surge of motivation to express yourself and to take creative action. However, the conjunctions with Saturn and Neptune to the Aries transits this month require a bit of careful management of your energy. And while you could feel an urge to radiate your light outward a little bit impulsively or to express yourself impulsively, Saturn will ask you to take responsibility for how you direct your vitality, ensuring that you don't burn out. And the new moon in Aries on the 17th will offer a potent moment for a fresh start in how you project yourself into the world. It really encourages you to release any lingering doubts about your creative capabilities or about your leadership leadership abilities if that's relevant. And then later in the month, as we move to Taurus season and that Taurus Sun squares with Pluto and Aquarius, your core energy could feel a lot of pressure to evolve. And so this month, you are challenged to adapt your creative expression, moving away from outdated modes of validation and towards a more grounded and deeply authentic presence that can really withstand the weight of the world. Virgo Sun, April presents a period of calibration for your detailed analytical sense of being. And so early in the month, a heavy concentration of planets in Aries, particularly with Mercury's transits and its conjunctions in the sign of Aries, will create a rapid influx of thoughts and impulses that could challenge your methodical nature. And you could usually, perceive the world through the lens of order, but this blunt and impulsive Aries energy could ask you to process information on the fly. And so rapid brainstorming is certainly possible, but you must consciously pace yourself this month to ensure that your actions are rooted in practicality. Fortunately, though, there is going to be a conjunction of Mars, Mercury, and Saturn in the middle of the month, which provides a very helpful grounding force, allowing you to crystallize your ideas and take disciplined responsibility for your energy output. And as Taurus season begins on the 19th, your life force will receive a lovely stabilizing boost. This earthly energy will beautifully support your need for grounded reality. However, as the month comes to a close, there is going to be a square between a Taurus Sun and Pluto in Aquarius, and there will also be a conjunction with Venus and Uranus in Gemini. And this will introduce a lot of sudden shifts, at least mentally. And so your analytical side could face forces demanding that you break your usual way of being. And by applying your thoughtful nature to assess what genuinely needs to change, you can adapt your routines without threatening your core sense of security. Libra suns, April is a significant month for your balanced, fair minded nature, beginning immediately with a full moon in your sign on the 1st. And this lunation directly highlights your vitality, bringing an emotional intensity that requires your signature diplomacy. You will need to be balanced at the beginning of the month. And with this full moon opposing the Aries Sun and squaring Jupiter, you're kind of challenged to maintain your equilibrium while navigating maybe loud external forces or high internal emotions. And the dominant Aries energy continues throughout the middle of the month, including Mars and Mercury, acting as a continuous mirror for your sense of self. And while you naturally understand life through the lens of, other perspectives, these Aries transits could push you to recognize and assert yourself more independently. And this will culminate with the new moon on April 17th, conjoining with Chiron, which provides a powerful opportunity to heal any wounds you have regarding your self confidence and to find new, authentic ways of asserting yourself without compromising your sense of balance or fairness. And as the month progresses into Taurus season, the focus will shift towards kind of materializing your desires. And with intense aspects to Pluto from Taurus planets this season, you're going to be demanded to evolve this month. And so to maintain your energy, you have to try to balance your natural desire for harmony and balance with a gentle willingness to face necessary disruptions and adapt your perspective to maintain true internal balance. Be adaptable, but keep true to yourself at the same time. Scorpio suns, the transits of April engage deeply with your investigative and powerful spirit. And so early on, with the full moon making a trine to Pluto, your modern ruling planet, this will offer you a fresh, transformed perspective potentially that can stabilize your energy, and you could feel very productive at the beginning of the month in some way. However, just days later, we will be having Venus squaring Pluto on April 3rd, which presents a distinct challenge, potentially making you feel as though your core need for groundedness or security is being disrupted by forces outside of your control. And as we move into the mid month, a heavy cluster of planets in Aries will activate a fast, impulsive energy that contrasts a little bit to your strategic nature. And then, as Mars, which rules Scorpio traditionally, enters Aries and conjoins with Neptune, you could experience fluctuating boundaries. This is a wonderful time to channel your energy into creative or established pursuits rather than acting on unverified impulses. And then finally, as the sun squares with Pluto on the 25th, those themes of disruption and transformation will kind of return to you. Maybe close out a cycle, and your powerful nature could be tempted to stubbornly resist these shifts, but your vitality is actually best protected through the art of surrender and evolutionary adaptation. And by utilizing your investigative skills to assess the reality of new ideas this month, and by allowing yourself to evolve where necessary, rather than clinging to control, you can navigate the month's energy beautifully, and you can really set yourself up for success in the months to come. Sagittarius Sun. April brings a dynamic interplay of energies that could really stimulate your optimistic, expansive, and experience eager spirit. This month is significantly going to be influenced by fiery transits through the sign of Aries, which is a sign that naturally complements your own. And the presence of Sun, Mercury, and Mars in Aries could provide a fantastic surge of forward momentum for you, encouraging you to seek out new horizons and to take action in your life. However, mid month, with planetary conjunctions with Saturn and Neptune, you will be required to have a measured approach in whatever it is you go after. And so your eagerness for new experiences must be balanced with a little Saturnian responsibility to prevent burnout or energetic blockages, ensuring that your vitality is directed towards grounded realities rather than illusions. And the structured momentum will perfectly set up the new moon in Aries on the 17th, which is an excellent time for you to refresh your energy and to initiate new projects that align with your vision. And then later in the month, with Mercury in Aries squaring your ruling planet of Jupiter on the 26th, there will be a powerful tension that could bring a rush of big ideas that feel very urgent for you to express. And so, to maintain healthy balance this month, try to temper these fast mental insights with a genuine search for meaning, ensuring that your communications are empathetic and mindful and not purely impulsive. Capricorn Sun. Throughout April, your practical, security focused, and results oriented nature could face a month of recalibration and constructive tension. And so the month begins with a full moon in Libra on the 1st, which challenges you to balance your internal emotional realities with your external focus on security and results. Moving towards the middle of the month, your energy is closely monitored by the movements of your ruling planet of Saturn, which will conjoin with Mars and Mercury in Aries. And this alignment will directly impact your sense of self, presenting a brilliant opportunity to crystallize your ideas and to take disciplined responsibility for how you assert yourself in the world. And while the fast paced Aries energy could feel impulsive or a bit abrasive to your nature, this period allows you to structure your efforts efficiently, avoiding burnout while still making very tangible progress. And as the month transitions into Taurus season, your vitality will receive a supporting, grounding influence that will align perfectly with your nature. You could feel a little bit more grounded. However, as the Taurus sun makes a square to Pluto, and with Venus conjoining Uranus later in the month, this will introduce sudden shifts that could, challenge your sense of established security. And so this month you are being asked to evolve. Instead of clinging onto old structures, try to use your practical mindset and a detached perspective to assess what genuinely needs to adapt to ensure that you can continue to succeed throughout the month and the upcoming months to come. Aquarius Sun. April is a month that deeply activates your spirit and your ability to see the world from, a futuristic, innovative, detached, outside point of view. And so the month starts off beautifully because there will be a full moon in Libra, trining Pluto in your sign, which harmonizes with your energy and could allow your walk to the beat of your own drum nature to find a balanced, transformative perspective. You could start to see a situation in your life more clearly. And throughout the middle of the month, heavy Aries energy provides you with the courage to assert maybe your unconventional ideas, while the conjunctions with Saturn will remind you to thoughtfully structure those insights you have into something that you know is worth something. And as we move on to the later part of the month, when Venus and the Sun in Taurus makes a square to Pluto in your sign, you could feel an intense friction between your drive for sudden change and the practical needs that you have for stability. You naturally thrive on breaking outdated molds, but these squares will ask you to balance your urges with reality in some way. Furthermore, the entry of your modern ruling planet of Uranus into Gemini later in the month will provide a supercharged spark to your energy, to your vitality, and this transit will highly stimulate your intellect, maybe bringing sudden insights and a desire to communicate your passions in some way. And so, by pacing your mental energy and grounding your ideas, you can protect your inner spark and allow your identity to shine brightly this month. This is the month to really put your ideas out there. Pisces suns, this April, your empathetic, compassionate, and energetically sponge like nature could require some careful navigation and strong boundaries. And the month will open up with a full moon in Libra on the 1st, which highlights the need for balance within your emotional world, asking you to maintain equilibrium amidst external intensity. And as we move into the middle of the month, when Mars and Mercury conjoin with your modern ruling planet of Neptune, your creative and intuitive faculties will be very highly stimulated. And so, this is truly a beautiful time to engage in creative action and compassionate reflection. However, though, as the fast Aries energy that dominates this period could feel overwhelming to your system, you really do need to put up those energetic boundaries or where possible. And because you are so open, your energy is vulnerable to absorbing, the data of others. Maybe you blur your boundaries, or there could be a lot of people trying to assert something onto you that could overwhelm you and burn you out if you're not careful. So, to protect your energy this month, it really is crucial that you do not force action if your body does not feel like doing something. But also, you need to avoid impulsively chasing ungrounded new ideas until you can really root them in your reality. And then later in the month, as Mercury squares Jupiter, you could experience a rush of empathetic ideas that feel urgent. You could be brilliant at this time as well. And by allowing yourself to sit with this tension and filtering external inputs through your energy, you can really maintain so much energetic integrity and energy to really express yourself on a whole new revolutionary level throughout the month. Aries Moon, as the month begins, the full moon in Libra mirrors your inner emotional landscape. And so, opposing your placements and squaring Jupiter, this challenges your core sense of safety. And you could feel a tension between your instinctual, action oriented reactions and external demands for fairness. So, balance your internal temperament and momentum without suppressing your feelings. Mid month, though, the new moon in Aries conjoining Chiron resets your temperament, and this offers a chance to heal wounds where your confidence is stalled, to release baggage, and to assert yourself. And then later, as Mars meets Saturn, pause before your instincts take over. Structuring your urges at this time really helps you to navigate this energy effectively. And finally, with Mercury squaring Jupiter, this will speed up your mental patterns. And so, focus on what brings meaning to keep your temperament steady and your inner self secure. Taurus Moon, the full moon in Libra, highlights your inner emotional landscape and desire for harmony. And while your internal temperament seeks steady, methodical stability, squares to Jupiter to this moon will run your feelings a bit high. And so, balance your need for steadiness with the shifting external dynamics. And then with Venus squaring Pluto also early in the month, this will challenge your core sense of safety, maybe with unpredictable changes. So stay grounded rather than resistant. That's the key for you. Going into the middle of the month with the new moon in Aries conjoining Chiron, this will catalyze your emotional core, initiating a fresh start that could disrupt your pace, but it offers a chance to heal wounds around asserting your needs and forgiving yourself if processing has stalled. And then later in the month with Venus conjoining with Uranus, this brings an urge to change what makes you feel safe or to rebel against what no longer makes you feel safe. And finally, as the sun squares Pluto at the end of the month, pressure to evolve will peak for you. So avoid stubbornness and adapt practically to reinforce a sense of safety this month. Gemini Moon, the full moon in Libra highlights your inner emotional landscape, asking you to find equilibrium through different perspectives. The square to Jupiter magnifies feelings with your internal temperament. And with Aries energy accelerating your thoughts, your sense of safety relies on pacing yourself to avoid mental overload. Mid month, the new moon in Aries conjoining Chiron will pivot your clever investigative heart, and it really initiates a fresh start to heal insecurities regarding intellectual intellectual confidence, allowing you to release baggage and assert your needs with curiosity. And then as the month closes, Venus and Uranus will activate your sign, bringing sudden insights and shifting passions, maybe more towards new information or new, feelings. And so you could feel an urge to rebel or adapt your values. And so this month, feed your curiosity, but avoid burnout to navigate these shifts with a balanced sense of internal security. Cancer moons. The full moon in Libra will square Jupiter in your moon sign, which peaks intensity within your inner emotional landscape. So navigate the balance between your intuitive, empathetic feelings and the external demands for fairness. Your sense of safety could feel stretched, but a trine to Pluto offers a transformed perspective if you can surrender rather than retreat. Mid-month as well, the new moon in Aries conjoining Chiron will act as a catalyst. It provides an opportunity to heal emotional wounds regarding how you emotionally protect yourself, and you can release baggage to assert needs without hiding. And then as the month closes with Mercury squaring Jupiter, this can challenge your internal temperament with a lot of urgent thoughts or feelings. And so sit with this tension. Honor your intuition and process feelings before acting to keep your heart protected and centered throughout the month. Leo moon, the full moon in Libra will harmonize with your expressive heart. It invites equilibrium within your inner emotional landscape. So balance your desire to radiate light with the diplomatic needs of your environment. And while the energy is high, your core sense of safety will benefit from seeking fairness within your reactions. Mid-month, with Aries planets invigorating your internal temperament, the connections to these Aries planets, though to Saturn, will warn against impulsive expenditures. Don't, overthink your emotions and don't feed into your own emotional reactions. Try to balance that out. And the new moon in Aries conjoining Chiron offers a fresh start to heal doubts surrounding your creative confidence, letting you to release baggage and to assert your virtuous passions in whatever way resonates with you. Finally, as Taurus transits make a square to Pluto, your need for security will face pressure to evolve. And so ensure your warmth is grounded this month and take disciplined responsibility for your energy to adapt to these shifts this month. Virgo moon, the full moon in Libra will ask your inner emotional landscape to seek equilibrium, and your core sense of safety relies on practical application and analysis. But this lunation, which is squaring Jupiter in Cancer, introduces unpredictable feelings that could challenge your internal temperament. Find balance by acknowledging feelings rather than overanalyzing them. Mid-month, the new moon in Aries conjoining Chiron will catalyze your emotional core. It initiates a fresh start to heal wounds surrounding perfectionism, allowing you to forgive yourself and to assert your detailed needs without overthinking. And then later in the month, Taurus transits will boost your sense of safety. However, as Venus and the Sun square Pluto and conjoin Uranus throughout the month, methodical routines could face disruption for you. And so I would use your analytical nature this month to assess what must change, and you need to adapt practically when it's called for to maintain your resilience and to really, capture your center this month. Libra moon, the full moon in your sign brings your inner emotional landscape into focus. And because this opposes Aries planets and squares with Jupiter in Cancer, your core sense of safety could be tested as internal emotions could clash with external forces. Maintain your balanced internal temperament while acknowledging your feelings without deferring to others. Mid-month as well, the new moon in Aries will oppose your emotional core. So conjoining with Chiron as well, this will initiate a fresh start to heal wounds regarding codependency. Release the baggage of compromising your needs to keep the peace, even if it's not with other people, even if it's just within your environment. Later in the month, as Taurus transits square Pluto, your sense of emotional safety faces a lot of pressure to evolve. You could feel an urge to rebel against dynamics that do bring you insecurity, and so assert your independent needs while maintaining fairness to achieve authentic balance this month. Scorpio moon, the full moon in Libra brings nuance to your deep, investigative, inner emotional landscape. And because this full moon trends Pluto, it offers a balanced perspective to you. Your core sense of safety strengthens when you surrender, allowing feelings to transform rather than controlling them. And soon after, with Venus squaring Pluto, this could challenge your need for internal stability with external changes. Going to the middle of the month, the new moon in Aries conjoining Chiron instigates your internal temperament. It could initiate a fresh start to heal wounds around how you assert your emotional power or feel it, and it can help you release baggage and process your intensity. As the month closes, with the sun squaring Pluto, your emotional body could face a little bit of disruption, not necessarily in an extreme way, but no matter how you feel, avoid stubborn resistance and use your investigative skills to assess this evolution and to adapt, allowing inner strength to flourish all throughout the month. Sagittarius Moon, the full moon in Libra, harmonizes with your expansive inner emotional landscape, and it highlights your core sense of safety by asking for equilibrium between your desire for growth and the need for fairness in how you connect with the world or connect with others. Mid-month as well, the new moon in Aries conjoining Chiron will reinvigorate your internal temperament. It can initiate a fresh start to heal, especially where you feel stalled in your emotional confidence, letting you to release baggage and assert your needs with a lot more enthusiasm than you might have felt in the past few months. And then later in the month, as Mercury squares Jupiter, your mental patterns will accelerate. You could experience urgent ideas that challenge your emotional safety with overwhelming intensity. You could feel overwhelmed a little bit this month, but no matter what happens, ground your urges in a genuine search for meaning rather than fleeting excitement to maintain equilibrium, especially where you don't feel you normally get that. This is the time to find your balance. Capricorn Moon, the full moon in Libra will challenge your practical inner emotional landscape. Squaring your moon, at least by sign, it could create tension between your need for control and the messy emotions that kind of demand, fairness or diplomacy in a way that kind of goes against your nature. And so your core sense of safety will ask you to acknowledge these feelings rather than managing them for a result. And then going to the middle of the month, as Saturn conjoins with Mars and Mercury, you could experience a little bit of energetic restriction in how you process feelings. And so I would protect your security by crystallizing internal boundaries. And this prepares you for the new moon in Aries conjoining Chiron, which will catalyze your internal temperament. It really initiates a fresh start to heal wounds where you have suppressed your feelings for the sense of duty. This is the time to heal that and really feel deeply. And as the month closes, establish structures that face disruption. Avoid clinging to the past and use your grounded perspective to adapt your sense of safety to whatever the month really throws at you. Aquarius moons, the full moon will harmonize with your inner emotional landscape. It's happening in your fellow air sign of Libra. It really offers a balanced perspective, reinforcing your core sense of safety when you rebel against outdated reactions and you embrace a more innovative and freeing approach to who you are. Middle of the month with the new moon in Aries conjoining Chiron, this will activate your internal temperament and it really initiates a fresh start to heal wounds regarding past alienation, allowing you to release baggage and assert your needs without feeling bad for them. Later in the month, as Uranus creates new aspects, as it, enters into Gemini, this will stimulate your passions and bring sudden emotional insights that you didn't even know you had. However, with squares to Pluto this month, this could cause a little bit of friction between the need for evolution and the desire for stability. And so I would balance your quick insights this month with practical adaptability to keep your heart grounded and to keep your ideas, in a plane where you can really, feel that sense of safety while also being yourself at the same time. Pisces moons, the full moon in Libra highlights your inner emotional landscape's desire for equilibrium. And because you act as an empathetic sponge, this lunation squaring with Jupiter could overwhelm your core sense of safety. And so I would balance compassionate feelings this month with unbiased boundaries. That's the key. Going into the middle of the month as well, your creative passions are stimulated, but boundaries could blur. Listen to your body no matter what happens, and do not force urges that you don't feel like you're ready to act on. And then the new moon in Aries conjoining Chiron this month will kind of pivot your internal temperament because it really initiates a fresh start to heal wounds regarding boundary issues, your own self-worth, helping you to forgive yourself and to assert your needs in a compassionate way. And it's about compassion to yourself almost. And as the month closes, you could experience urgent empathetic ideas. And so this month, I would root your internal safety in established streams to ensure that your inner world remains secure so that you can get through this month in one piece. Aries Mercury at the beginning of the month, April, accelerates your already fast paced mind, putting your thought processes into overdrive and making your words potentially blunt. So you are being urged to pace yourself and to think before you speak. And then in the middle of the month, especially around the 16th, your intuition peaks, but the line between fact and fiction could blur. And by the 19th, Saturn will kind of step in, demanding that you take these rapid fire slightly messy ideas you have and structure them into concrete, workable plans. And then later in the month, by the 26th, you could feel an urgent, passionate push to share your grand concepts with the world in some way. And so the theme throughout the month is grounding your high speed mental energy into reality so that you can maximize your brilliant ideas without burning out. Taurus Mercury at the beginning of the month, early Venus Pluto squares could bring fast changing news or fast changing thoughts, almost that disrupts your steady methodical mindset. So you are being urged to resist the urge to stubbornly cling onto old views and to process the impulsive ideas coming your way. And then in the middle of the month, mental stability could thankfully return as the sun will enter your Mercury sign, helping you to ground your thoughts and ease the chaotic Aries energy that may have taken you out of your comfort zone a bit. And then later in the month, watch for unexpected sudden urges to break your usual communication habits and to vocalize your values. And so the theme throughout the month for you is really maintaining an adaptable perspective so that you can successfully navigate the cognitive shifts that could be happening this month. Gemini Mercury at the beginning of the month, with your ruling planet racing through Aries, your clever, curious mind could go into brainstorming overdrive. So you are being urged to feed your curiosity, but consciously pace yourself to avoid impulsive chatter. And then in the middle of the month, beware of maybe blurry facts or, maybe impulsive thoughts and double check your information before speaking. And then around the 19th, Saturn will be asking you to ground those busy thoughts and weave them into a responsible, actionable plan in some way. And then later in the month, as Venus and Uranus enters your sign, expect a massive intellectual wake up call flooded with sudden insights and out of the box ideas. And so the theme for you throughout the month is to consciously pace your mind to avoid mental exhaustion and misunderstandings. Cancer Mercury at the beginning of the month, an early Libra full moon makes conversations feel highly charged, and the blunt Aries communication style could feel abrasive to your intuitive, mindset. So you are being urged to carefully balance your personal insights with a diplomatic approach to keep the peace where possible. And then in the middle of the month, you're told to trust your gut really, but definitely verify major news before reacting emotionally to confusing information. And then later in the month, your biggest mental shift will happen around the 26th as Mercury squares Jupiter in your sign, bringing a sudden rush of expansive, empathetic ideas that you'll desperately want to share. And so the theme throughout the month is sitting with mental tension before speaking and balance your insights, your thoughts with a genuine search for deeper meaning. And that's how you'll make it out of the month best. Especially at the beginning of the month, but also throughout April, you will have a fired up kind of mindset. You'll be fired up to express yourself. Your creative mind could be, racing, making you eager to step up and share your ideas. So you're being urged to speak with confidence, but ensure that your grand statements are rooted in reality. And then in the middle of the month, a necessary mental reality check could arrive on the 19th via Saturn. So use this transit not as an intellectual roadblock but as the scaffolding needed to truly crystallize a vision that you have. And then later in the month, especially with Taurus Sun squaring Pluto and Aquarius, this could challenge your intellectual security in some way, demanding that your core mindset and way of communicating evolves in some way. And so the theme throughout the month is staying grounded and consciously pacing your ideas so that your creative visions can actually take shape in the way that you intend them to. Virgo Mercury at the beginning of the month, April pushes your highly analytical mind to process information a lot faster than usual, making communication maybe feel abrupt or hurried. So you are being urged to lean into creative problem solving at this time rather than forcing data to be perfect. And then in the middle of the month, your standard logical frameworks could get uncomfortably fuzzy, but your mental sweet spot will hit on the 19th when Saturn could provide the exact structure you need to turn scattered information into practical plans. And then later in the month, Taurus energy brings a grounded rhythm, but late month Pluto squares could fundamentally challenge how you approach problem solving and will ask you to adapt. And so the theme throughout the month is avoid getting stuck in rigid details and a willingness to adapt your perspective when traditional logic fails. Libra Mercury, at the beginning of the month, you'll likely feel a clash between your deep need for mental harmony and the loud Aries energy dominating the month. So you are being urged to stay centered amidst intense, maybe fast paced conversations or thoughts. And then in the middle of the month, keep your diplomatic filter firmly in place and watch for confusing information. And then, especially around the 19th, Saturn will demand you to set firm mental boundaries and take absolute responsibility for voicing your own independent ideas. And then, as we approach the late part of the month, Pluto squares could test your intellectual approach to maybe relationship security, asking that you look at things from a different angle where it's needed. And so, the theme throughout the month is staying objective and adaptable to really harmonize the dynamics of the month. And this will help you to really keep your center throughout the month so that you can keep your balanced mindset exactly that balanced. Scorpio Mercury, at the beginning of the month, the early Libra full moon will alter your perspective entirely, but your normally strategic communication style could be tested by the blunt Aries energy of the month, so you are being urged to let go of old thinking patterns and stay adaptable. And then in the middle of the month, heightened intuition with Mercury and Neptune could require you to use your investigative skills to separate a deep truth from maybe data that's a bit confusing. And then around the 19th, Saturn will provide an excellent opportunity to build your maybe intense or deep thoughts into something serious and structured. And then as we get later in the month, squares to Pluto could disrupt your core ideas about how you approach control and security on a mental level. And so the theme throughout the month is allowing your intense thoughts to evolve naturally without stubbornly clinging on to what no longer serves you. Sagittarius Mercury, at the beginning of the month, April brings a massive wave of speed and energy to your optimistic big picture mind, making it a fantastic time for visionary brainstorming. And so you are being urged to ride this wave, but ensure your ideas have a solid foundation. But then in the middle of the month, you must ensure that your ideas do not lose their footing on incomplete facts. But a crucial checkpoint will definitely arrive around the 19th when Saturn joins with Mercury, and you need to apply discipline and structure to your ideas at this time. If you want to avoid mental burnout, it's also a good time to start a project with your ideas. And then later in the month, by the 26th, with Mercury square Jupiter, maybe an urgent rush of big, empathetic thoughts could hit you, and these could demand to be shared. And so the theme throughout the month is really balancing your extremely quick insights with patience so that you can genuinely inspire people or results without overwhelming yourself or the world around you. Capricorn Mercury, at the beginning of the month, the blunt, maybe impulsive Aries energy dominating could initially jar your highly practical, results oriented mind. So you are being urged to stay patient and brace yourself for maybe a chaotic communication style or a lot of information from other people. And then in the middle of the month, it is crucial to double check facts before making any decisions that require, an analytical eye, because Mercury will conjoin with Neptune. But your major advantage of the month will hit on the 19th when Mercury meets your ruling planet of Saturn, allowing you to potentially structure this chaotic mental energy into something actually workable. And then later in the month, when the sun enters Taurus, this could help your brain settle into a grounded rhythm. But a late month Pluto square could challenge your mental frameworks around security. And so the theme for you throughout the month is to use your natural practicality to assess what needs changing rather than clinging to, familiar frameworks that no longer serve you. Aquarius Mercury, at the beginning of the month, an early full moon in Libra making a trine to Pluto in your sign could offer a transformative shift in your thinking, while the Aries energy all throughout the month could fuel bold, unconventional brainstorming. So you are being urged to lean into your innovative mind and embrace out of the box concepts. And then in the middle of the month, you'll experience maybe brilliant intuitive light bulb moments, but you must verify facts before sharing these visions. And then around the 19th, Saturn will step in, requiring that you actually build those sudden insights into actionable plans. And then later in the month, as Uranus, which is your modern ruler, enters Gemini, your focus will shift heavily towards passionate, rapid learning and consuming new information. You'll want to learn a lot, especially at the end of the month. And so the theme throughout the month for you is balancing your intense drive for mental evolution with the practical adaptability needed to make your ideas real. Pisces Mercury, aren't you glad that the retrograde's over? Maybe it's just me. At the beginning of the month, though, the fast Aries communication style, which is dominating throughout the month, by the way, could initially overwhelm your highly empathetic, open mind. So you're being urged to protect your energy and to avoid taking, harsh words a little bit too personally. And then in the middle of the month, your biggest cognitive moment will hit when Mercury meets with Neptune, which is an excellent transit for creative intuition, but facts could blur. So this is the time where if you are having a lot of ideas around this time, you could be onto something, but obviously investigate first. And then around the 19th, Saturn will provide the much needed mental boundaries to help you structure those thoughts you may have had earlier in the month. And then by the late part of the month, especially around the 26th, you could feel an urgent rush to share your empathetic ideas with anybody who will listen. And so the theme throughout the month for you is rooting your deeply receptive thoughts into reality so that your mind stays secure, grounded, and most importantly, effective. Aries Venus, at the beginning of the month, there is a square between Venus and Pluto, which could bring intense tension. So you might be urged to slow down and not aggressively force creative or financial outcomes at this time. And then going into the middle of the month, especially around the 23rd, with Venus conjoining with Uranus, you could experience a sudden spark to reignite your creative drive, which could bring abrupt but necessary changes to your core values and maybe how you handle money or love. And then later in the month, when Venus shifts into Gemini, your focus could be to move towards communication, which could leave you craving active learning and maybe sharing your new interests. And so the theme throughout the month for you could be to enjoy new experiences while also making sure that you stay grounded in what genuinely will bring you long-term stability. Taurus Venus, at the beginning of the month, as your ruling planet of Venus makes a square to Pluto, your deep need for calmness in your environment and your passions could be intensely challenged. So you might feel urged to adapt to your perspective and not stubbornly cling to outdated comforts. And then in the middle of the month, especially around the 23rd, with Venus conjoining Uranus, you could get a sudden, undeniable urge to break your typical, maybe aesthetic habits, or you could receive unexpected news about your finances, maybe romance or your personal style. And then later in the month, as Venus enters Gemini, you could find yourself wanting to vocalize what you value just a lot more than you usually do. And so the theme throughout the month is going to be balancing your core need for security with a willingness to actually embrace these sudden, revitalizing changes in your values. Gemini Venus, at the beginning of the month, as Venus squares Pluto, you could face some intense, unexplainable friction regarding what you truly value, and so you may feel urged to resist the urge to overthink these sudden shifts in your values, your tastes. And then in the middle of the month, especially around the 23rd, with Venus conjoining Uranus, you could experience some unexpected insights that could dramatically shake up what you value, maybe aesthetically, romantically, financially, asking you to practically adapt. And then later in the month, when Venus officially enters your sign, you could suddenly feel like you're in your element and your passions can thrive on stimulating communication, learning, and sharing lighthearted moments with others. And so the theme throughout the month for you will be satisfying your intense curiosity while staying realistic about the sudden changes that might be reshaping your values at this time. Cancer Venus, at the beginning of the month, especially with Venus squaring Pluto, your desire for calm, secure environments could be challenged by forces that feel like they're outside of your control. And so you could be urged to face necessary disruptions rather than retreating into your shell. And then in the middle of the month, especially around the 23rd, with Venus conjoining Uranus, maybe sudden insights could abruptly awaken new, maybe financial or romantic desires, or point your creative life in a completely new direction. And then later in the month, once Venus enters Gemini, you could naturally want to express what you value through sharing ideas and learning with other people and kind of bonding in that way. And so the theme throughout the month will be keeping your heart open to these sudden shifts without compromising your fundamental need for emotional comfort. Leo Venus at the beginning of the month, especially with Venus squaring Pluto, maybe underlying power dynamics could put pressure on your creative light. And so you could be urged to embrace a deep, perhaps uncomfortable transformation in what you value rather than stubbornly demanding validation. And then around the middle of the month, especially with Venus conjoining Uranus on the 23rd, a sudden spark could radically awaken your tastes and your romantic or financial perspective, potentially bringing a strong urge to rebel against stifling situations in your life. And then later in the month, as Venus shifts into Gemini, you could find immense joy in vocalizing your artistic passions or sharing your ideas. And so the theme throughout the month will be balancing your radiant need for self expression with a practical willingness to adapt your expectations in whatever it is that you pursue. Virgo Venus at the beginning of the month, especially as Venus squares Pluto, you could feel significant tension when your carefully planned routines around what you value, or maybe your love language in some way, is disrupted by uncontrollable variables. And so you will be urged not to overly criticize yourself while you navigate these shifts. And then in the middle of the month, especially around the 23rd, with Venus conjoining Uranus, some unexpected insights could abruptly shake up what you desire materially, romantically, and aesthetically. And as we move later in the month, once Venus enters Gemini, your focus could shift heavily towards communication, and you might feel most inspired when gathering data and sharing clever ideas and, expressing your love in completely new ways. And so the theme throughout the month will be balancing your analytical desire for things to be perfect with a grounded acceptance of the liberating shifts that might happen for you at this time. Libra Venus at the beginning of the month, as your ruling planet of Venus makes a square to Pluto, your deep desire for harmony could be challenged by some underlying power dynamics, urging you to allow a slightly uncomfortable transformation without compromising your core values to, appease other people. And then in the middle of the month, especially around the 23rd, with Venus conjoining Uranus, a sudden spark could radically shake up maybe your financial strategies, your romantic tastes, and personal style, bringing an unexpected urge to rebel against situations that bring you insecurity. And then later in the month, as Venus moves into Gemini, you'll likely want to express your passions through intellectual exchange and lighthearted fun. And so the theme throughout the month is balancing your inherent need for equilibrium with a willingness to embrace the sudden changes necessary for your creative growth. Scorpio Venus at the beginning of the month, especially with Venus squaring Pluto, you could feel the pull between wanting grounded calmness and facing sudden external forces. And so you are urged to resist stubbornly holding on to outdated aesthetic or romantic or financial habits just because they feel safe. And then around the middle of the month, especially around the 23rd, when Venus conjoins Uranus, expect some supercharged insights to abruptly awaken your material values and tastes, giving you a sudden urge to break the mold regarding what actually brings you security. And then later in the month, once Venus enters Gemini, your desires could lighten up noticeably, shifting more towards communicative pursuits or a strong need to vocalize your intense passions. And so the theme for you throughout the month is balancing your powerful need for depth with a highly adaptable approach to the sudden shifts that could be reshaping your core values at this time. Sagittarius Venus at the beginning of the month, especially with Venus squaring Pluto, maybe heavy transformative dynamics could momentarily tie you down, urging you to lean into deeper commitments or financial restructuring instead of just running away. And then in the middle of the month, especially around the 23rd, with Venus conjoining Uranus, a sudden spark could radically awaken maybe your material desires or your romantic desires, bringing an unexpected urge to rebel against any routines that feel stagnant or boring. And then later in the month, as Venus shifts into Gemini, your passions could thrive on learning or chatting or sharing your expansive ideas. And so the theme throughout the month for you is going to be balancing your enthusiastic pursuit of adventure with a grounded willingness to adapt to these sudden foundational changes within what you value. Capricorn Venus, at the beginning of the month, especially with Venus squaring Pluto, you could feel some serious friction when your carefully planned, routines or your passions could face sudden shifts. So you are urged not to stubbornly cling to values purely out of fear. You need to adapt. And then in the middle of the month, especially around the 23rd with Venus conjoining Uranus, expect sudden insights that could shake up your material or romantic goals and what you find beautiful, really asking you to blend your stoic need for safety, practicality with the sudden changes happening. And later in the month, once Venus enters Gemini, you'll likely notice your focus shifting more towards communication. And you could find that verbalizing your goals actually helps your passions thrive. And so the theme throughout the month is to balance your disciplined desire for reliability with a grounded acceptance of the sudden shifts that are revitalizing what you value. Aquarius Venus, at the beginning of the month, especially with Venus squaring Pluto in your sign, you might experience powerful friction navigating unavoidable external changes. So you are urged not to stubbornly detach from your creative projects when these tensions rise. Let the wave pass. And then in the middle of the month, especially around the 23rd with Venus conjoining Uranus, a sudden spark could awaken maybe your financial strategies, your relationship with romance, and your personal tastes, which could, make you want to rebel against anything that makes you feel a little bit too trapped, if that makes sense. And then later in the month, as Venus moves into Gemini, you'll likely seek to express your passions through clever intellectual banter. And so the theme throughout the month is balancing those sudden creative light bulb moments with a practical willingness to actually ground those changes into your reality. And then for my Pisces Venus, at the beginning of the month, especially with Venus squaring Pluto, you could absorb a lot of tension as your artistic talents or your values in general could clash with external changes, which urges you to resist the urge to sacrifice your own romantic or financial or aesthetic needs just to maintain a false sense of harmony in your life. And then going into the middle of the month, especially around the 23rd with Venus conjoining Uranus, unexpected insights could awaken your romantic needs, your material desires, or your artistic tastes, making you want to break the mold regarding what brings you real comfort. And then later in the month, especially with Venus entering Gemini, your desires could shift towards a more communicative desire. You could want to really put your passions out there, create more art, love a little bit deeper, read about things that you really value. And so the theme throughout the month is really balancing your wonderfully open heart with a practical, adaptable approach to these sudden shifts, reshaping what you value most. Aries Mars, at the beginning of the month, especially as your ruling planet of Mars returns to your sign on the 9th, you could feel a boost of bravery, encouraging you to channel this surge into, your drive. However, in the middle of the month, around the 12th, with Mars conjoining Neptune, your instincts could get a little bit foggy. And because of this, it is crucial to focus your energy on creative projects that maybe you've already started rather than acting on new ideas. And when you hit a frustrating roadblock that stalls your momentum, later in the month, especially around and after the 19th with Mars conjoining Saturn, try to use this time to structure your goals instead of fighting them. And so ultimately, the theme throughout the month for you is pacing yourself and being deliberate with your energy so that you can prevent burnout and turn energy into lasting achievements. Taurus Mars, at the beginning of the month, especially after Mars enters Aries on the 9th, the collective energy will accelerate dramatically, which will demand quicker responses than maybe your methodical pace usually prefers. And as your physical boundaries might blur a little bit in the middle of the month, especially around the 12th with Mars conjoining Neptune, you have to listen to your body at this time. Avoid pushing through fatigue if you feel it, and stick to established dreams and actions rather than rushing unverified projects. Fortunately, though, the energy is going to shift in your favor later in the month, especially around the 19th with Mars conjoining Saturn, and we have Taurus season starting, creating the perfect environment for you to build and structure your ambitions while others could feel blocked. And your overarching theme through the month is keeping your grounded approach amidst impulsive energy so that you can successfully prevent burnout and really, do what it is that you got to do. Gemini Mars, at the beginning of the month, especially as Mars moves into Aries on the 9th, you will receive a surge of motivation to brainstorm and communicate. This could stimulate your mind and make you really go after what it is that you want. However, you must be careful in the middle of the month, especially around the 12th with Mars conjoining Neptune, as your investigative drive could be misled by confusing information. And so, to protect your energy, focus on established projects rather than jumping onto new ideas. And when you face a sudden pause to your momentum later in the month, especially around the 19th with Mars conjoining Saturn, this transit will demand that you organize your efforts and to take responsibility for how you're using your energy. Consequently, the theme throughout the month for you is to use this structured time to pace your mind, prevent nervous system burnout, and channel your cleverness where it actually counts. Cancer Mars, at the beginning of the month, especially as Mars moves into Aries on the 9th, it brings a contrast to your protective energy, meaning you could feel pushed to act aggressively or feel intense action directed at you. You might feel a lot of pressure to do something. And because your energetic boundaries could be highly sensitive in the middle of the month, especially around the 12th, with Mars conjoining Neptune, it is crucial to listen closely to your body, not force action if you are depleted, and direct your compassionate energy exclusively towards dreams that are already established. And even though you could hit what feels like a heavy roadblock later in the month, especially around the 19th with Mars conjoining Saturn, this could actually be a vital opportunity for you to firm up your boundaries. And so ultimately, the theme throughout the month is taking responsibility for how you exert yourself and protecting your empathetic core so that you can sustain your drive all month long. Leo Mars, at the beginning of the month, especially with Mars moving into Aries on the 9th, you could receive a compatible surge to your radiant energy, pushing you to bravely showcase your talents to the world, or, to whatever it is that you do. It doesn't have to be public. However, since your expressive drive could hit blurred boundaries, especially in the middle of the month around the 12th with Mars conjoining Neptune, you should protect your energy by pouring what you have into projects that you've already started rather than chasing unverified inspirations. And then later in the month, especially around the 19th with Mars conjoining Saturn, you will hit a pivotal transit that really demands that you structure your ambitions, which could feel like someone threw a wet blanket onto your fire. And so the theme throughout the month for you is pacing your actions and avoiding impulsive moves so that you can prevent burnout and ensure that your light shines with sustainable strength. Virgo Mars, at the beginning of the month, especially as Mars enters Aries on the 9th, the pace around you could accelerate quickly, but you must not let this pressure force you to bypass your careful analysis. And because your practical boundaries could feel a little bit fuzzy, especially in the middle of the month around the 12th, it is important to avoid acting on unverified ideas. Focus your efforts on established pursuits and really listen to your body's limits at this time. But fortunately, the energy aligns much better with your rhythm later in the month, especially around the 19th with Mars conjoining Saturn, which could offer a superb opportunity to take your efforts and build them into solid structures. Therefore, the theme throughout the month is taking a deliberate pause to pace yourself, transforming the surrounding impulsive energy into methodical progress to avoid burnout. Libra Mars, at the beginning of the month as Mars enters Aries on the 9th and directly opposes your placements, at least by sign, an intense surge could hit, you or your relationships from outside forces, meaning you need to assert yourself bravely when needing without losing your center. And since interpersonal boundaries could easily blur in the middle of the month, especially around the 12th with Mars conjunct Neptune, you must protect your peace by avoiding confusing dynamics and focusing instead on what is already established. And then when the environment demands a serious, sense of attention later in the month, especially around the 19th with Mars conjunct Saturn, this checkpoint will ask you to set solid boundaries and take responsibility for how you assert your energy. It's a really good time to start planning for the next moves you want to make. And so the overarching themes throughout the month for you is pacing your efforts and not exerting yourself to please others or to get a result that you think you got to get, even though it doesn't really align with you, so that you can successfully prevent burnout. Scorpio Mars, at the beginning of the month, as your traditional ruling planet of Mars enters another sign it likes, which is Aries on the 9th, maybe a sharp surge will hit your strategic energy, pushing you to carefully handle the urge to exert yourself with uncharacteristic bluntness. Don't do anything impulsive at this time. And because your powerful drive could be compromised with confusing data or blurred boundaries, especially in the middle of the month around the 12th with Mars conjoining Neptune, you have to listen to your body and your instincts. Avoid forcing action on unverified urges and channel your intensity strictly into established pursuits. And when friction creates maybe a roadblock for your momentum later in the month, especially around the 19th with Mars conjoining Saturn, it will demand that you use this energy to actually structure your strategies rather than reacting in a way that maybe doesn't benefit you. And so the theme throughout the month is pacing your actions strategically to avoid burnout and harnessing your energy for long-term impact. Sagittarius Mars, at the beginning of the month, especially as Mars enters into Aries on April 9th, a massive surge will hit your adventurous energy, maybe giving you a brave push to explore a new horizon in your life in some way. However, since your drive might lack proper grounding in the middle of the month, especially around the 12th with Mars conjoining with Neptune, you should protect your physical energy by avoiding completely new impulses and channeling your enthusiasm into creative dreams that maybe you've already started. And then when a major shift temporarily pumps the brakes on your forward momentum later in the month, especially around the 19th with Mars conjoining Saturn, it is absolutely essential that you don't fight this restriction. Instead, your theme throughout the month is to use this time to structure your actions and firm up your physical boundaries so that your exploration and whatever it is that you want to go after, it can remain sustainable and you don't burn yourself out. Capricorn Mars, at the beginning of the month, especially as Mars enters Aries on the 9th, the impulsive energy could feel a little bit abrasive to your steady drive, meaning that you will have to handle the pressure to exert yourself without losing your focus on security. And then, as your practical boundaries could get unusually blurred in the middle of the month, especially around the 12th with Mars conjoining Neptune, you will need to maintain your integrity by refusing to act on unverified ideas and focusing strictly on established goals. Fortunately, though, for you later in the month, though, especially around the 19th, your ruling planet becomes highly active in a very constructive transit for you, offering a prime opportunity to structure your ambitions and to take responsibility for your physical output. And so, the overarching theme throughout the month for you is organizing your efforts efficiently, pacing yourself, and refusing to be rushed so that you can achieve solid results in your life. Aquarius Mars, at the beginning of the month, as Mars enters Aries on the 9th, a surge could hit your innovative energy, giving you a strong push to champion your unique ideas in some way. However, around the middle of the month, especially around the 12th with Mars conjoining Neptune, your usually detached perspective or your usually innovative perspective could get clouded by confusing data or blurred boundaries, meaning you must protect your energy levels by avoiding sudden action on new urges. Only act on something that you know is already established in your life. And then when a critical shift in your life feels more like a roadblock that could stall your action, especially later in the month, around the 19th when Mars conjoins Saturn, it will demand that you organize your efforts instead of rebelling against the pause. And so the theme for you throughout the month is to consciously pace your actions to successfully prevent burnout and to ground your energy into tangible progress in whatever it is you want to go after this month. And then for my Pisces Mars, at the beginning of the month, as Mars enters Aries on the 9th, the quick pace could feel a little bit overwhelming to your empathetic and open drive. And so you must navigate the accelerating collective energy with a lot of care and mindfulness. And because your physical and energetic boundaries will be heavily blurred in the middle of the month, especially around the 12th with Mars conjoining Neptune, you must listen to your body and avoid forcing action if you're tired, but also completely stay away from ungrounded urges. And even though you could experience a heavy roadblock or feel stuck later in the month, especially around the 19th with Mars conjoining Saturn, this transit actually provides the exact structural discipline that your open nature will need right now. And so the theme for you throughout the month is firming up your boundaries and pacing your actions to protect your sensitive system from absorbing excessive energy. And that is how you can get through the month without burning out. Aries Jupiter. At the beginning of the month, as Jupiter squares the Libra full moon, your action oriented approach to growth could feel torn between rushing forward and managing emotional tides within your bonds or your relationships. And because of the heavy Aries energy, you could feel pushed to grow through independent action. However, in the middle of the month, with Mars and Mercury conjoining Saturn, your expansion could hit a necessary pause, really requiring you to pace yourself rather than to make impulsive leaps. And then when you get a rush of urgent ideas later in the month with Mercury square Jupiter, balance those quick insights with empathy. And so the theme for you throughout the month is to anchor your actions in reality to keep your momentum sustainable. Taurus Jupiter. At the beginning of the month, as Jupiter squares the Libra full moon, your desire for steady growth could face tension from the heightened emotions and demands from others. And the Aries energy will challenge you, pushing you to find meaning in fast environments outside of your usual style. Fortunately, though, in the middle of the month with Mars and Mercury conjoining Saturn, you will find a constructive rhythm where you can build and structure your goals. And then when a rush of urgent news disrupts your methodical vibe later in a month with Mercury square Jupiter, balance those fast insights with practical action. And so for you, the theme throughout the month is adapting to those sudden changes so that your growth can remain deeply stable. Gemini Jupiter. At the beginning of the month, as the Jupiter transit squares the Libra full moon, your desire to gather diverse data could clash with emotionally charged relationship dynamics in some way. And the Aries energy will stimulate you, pushing you to find meaning through rapid brainstorming. However, in the middle of the month with Mars and Mercury conjoining Saturn, your scattered pursuits could hit a little bit of a wall, demanding that you organize your active mind into disciplined study. And then when a rush of urgent ideas floods your brain later in the month with Mercury square Jupiter, balance those quick thoughts with a patient search for deeper meaning in some way. And so the theme for you throughout the month is pacing your learning and avoiding mental burnout to truly expand your horizons. Cancer Jupiter. At the beginning of the month, as the Libra full moon squares Jupiter in your sign, your magnified expansion could face tension between maybe your subjective feelings and the external demand to keep the peace. And the blunt Aries energy this month will challenge you to protect your sensitive core while navigating abrasive environments. Fortunately, though, for the middle of the month, with Mars and Mercury conjoining Saturn, you can find deep meaning by setting firm, disciplined boundaries. And then when a sharp rush of urgent ideas hits later in the month, especially with Mercury square Jupiter, sit with that tension before reacting. And so the theme throughout the month is filtering rapid external insights through your intuition so that you can expand your worldview while staying securely anchored. Leo Jupiter. At the beginning of the month, especially as Jupiter squares the Libra full moon, your desire to shine could face tension with the emotional undercurrents and the need for fairness in your relationships or in your life. And the Aries energy will invigorate you, pushing you to find purpose through self-expression at this time, especially strongly. However, in the middle of the month, as Mars and Mercury conjoin with Saturn, your expansion could encounter a necessary pause, demanding that you take responsibility for your creative output rather than relying on dramatic bursts of energy. And then when a rush of fast-paced ideas demands your attention later in the month with Mercury square Jupiter, ground your big ideas in reality. That's all I got to say. And so the theme for you throughout the month is balancing your enthusiasm with empathetic depth to ensure that your growth this month is truly genuine. Virgo Jupiter. At the beginning of the month, as Jupiter squares the Libra full moon, your desire for perfection could face tension with the messy or real emotional dynamics and the external demands that you may see for harmony in your life. And the Aries energy will challenge your style, pushing you to find meaning in fast-paced environments that bypass your usual thought process. But fortunately, in the middle of the month with Mars and Mercury conjoining Saturn, you will discover a constructive period to take scattered data and to build it into disciplined structures. And then when a rush of maybe blunt or harsh information disrupts your focus later in the month with Mercury square Jupiter, allow yourself to adapt. And so the theme for you throughout the month is balancing your quick insights with your search for practical perfection to truly expand this month. Libra Jupiter at the beginning of the month, as the full moon in your sign will square with Jupiter in Cancer, your desire for harmony could face tension from deep emotional undercurrents. And the Aries energy throughout the month will oppose your nature, pushing you to find purpose through independent action rather than looking through the lens of others. And in the middle of the month, with Mars and Mercury conjoining Saturn, your relational growth could hit a necessary pause, really asking you to take responsibility for your own boundaries. And then, when a rush of urgent ideas demands your attention later in the month with Mercury squared Jupiter, assert your independent learning. Do something for yourself at this time. And so, the theme throughout the month for you is balancing your need for harmony with the courage to process the quick insights you could receive this month. Scorpio Jupiter at the beginning of the month, especially as Jupiter squares the Libra full moon, your desire for emotional control could face tension from external demands to maybe keep the peace. And the impulsive Aries energy will challenge you to find meaning in fast, overt environments that contrast with your strategic style. However, in the middle of the month, with Mars and Mercury conjunct Saturn, your deep expansion could encounter a necessary pause, really asking you to take your intensity and structure into long term plans. And then, when a rush of quick information triggers maybe your instincts later in the month with Mercury square Jupiter, you're asked to balance those quick insights with your willingness to let go of outdated beliefs. And so, the theme for you throughout the month is structuring your deep intensity to ensure genuine growth this month. Sagittarius Jupiter at the beginning of the month, as Jupiter squares the Libra full moon, your desire to roam free could face tension from deep emotional sensitivities or relationship obligations. Doesn't have to be romantic, it could be any kind of relationship. And then the heavy Aries energy will invigorate your quest for learning, pushing you to find purpose through maybe more bold adventures. However, in the middle of the month, with Mars and Mercury conjoining Saturn, your enthusiastic expansion could hit the brakes, requiring that you take responsibility for your vision and ensure that your pursuits are actually grounded in reality. And then, when a rush of big ideas floods your optimistic mind later in the month with Mercury squared Jupiter, you're being asked to balance those fast insights with a patient search for authentic meaning. And so, for you, the theme throughout the month is intentionally pacing your adventurous spirit to truly grow in a way that is sustainable over the long run. Capricorn Jupiter at the beginning of the month, as Jupiter squares the Libra full moon, your desire for careful structuring could face tension from maybe messy emotional tides and the demands for interpersonal balance. And so, the impulsive Aries energy will challenge you, pushing you into fast paced environments that could feel abrasive to your focus on security. But fortunately, in the middle of the month, with Mars and Mercury conjoining your ruling planet of Saturn, you can hit your stride during a powerful period where you can take maybe quick ideas and build them into something disciplined, into something real. And when a rush of urgent news or a lot of like scattered thoughts kind of, maybe sidetracks your focus later in the month with Mercury squared Jupiter, integrate these sudden changes into your practical reality rather than resisting them. And so, the theme for you throughout the month is expanding with lasting success by integrating sudden shifts efficiently. You got to be adaptable this month. Aquarius Jupiter at the beginning of the month, as Jupiter squares the Libra full moon, your desire for, innovation and to really push yourself to new horizons could face tension from deep emotional dynamics or relationship expectations. And that bold Aries energy invigorates you, pushing you to find purpose by courageously championing your unique ideas in some way. However, in the middle of the month, with Mars and Mercury conjoining Saturn, your sudden insights could encounter a necessary pause, requiring that you ground your ideas into responsible frameworks. And then, when a rush of maybe fast paced or intense information stimulates your mind, your intellect later in the month with Mercury square Jupiter, you're being asked to anchor your ideas into practical reality. And so, the theme throughout the month is balancing your drive for sudden evolution with empathetic understanding to ensure that the growth you have this month is genuine. And then, for my Pisces Jupiters, at the beginning of the month, as Jupiter squares the Libra full moon, your desire to expand through openness will face tension from intense emotional tides and also an external demand for maybe fairness. And the blunt Aries energy could challenge you this month, really pushing you to navigate environments that could feel a little bit fast for you. However, in the middle of the month with Mars and Mercury conjoining Saturn, your creative expansion could encounter a highly beneficial pause, asking you to establish firm boundaries to protect your sensitive nature. And then, when a rush of big ideas floods your compassionate mind later in the month with Mercury square Jupiter, you're being asked to filter this rapid learning through your intuitive mind. Process whatever hits you intuitively, not mentally. And so, the theme for you throughout the month is balancing fast insights with a quiet reflection to expand your spiritual horizons in a way that is truly beneficial to you. If your Saturn is in Aries, early in the month, the Libra full moon will oppose with Saturn very loosely, potentially causing tension between your need for independence and the demands maybe from your relationships or from, how you relate to the outside world in general. And with a lot of impulsive Aries energy in the sky, your usual foundations are being tested. It's kind of your Saturn return if you count the broad definition of what that is. But the real turning point will happen mid-month when Mars and Mercury conjoin with Saturn. And this could feel like maybe an intense roadblock, like your fast paced momentum has just hit a brick wall in some way. And so instead of impulsively fighting the delay, I would use this time to get clear on what your goals are. Take responsibility for how you assert those ideas as well, and pace your actions to build sustainable systems for your goals. And you'll turn these delays into lasting achievements in the long run. If your Saturn is in Taurus early on, as the Libra full moon opposes with transit Saturn, your plans could face a little bit of tension from outside relational demands. And all of this energy throughout the month of April could challenge your usual discipline. And so the biggest moment is going to hit mid month when Mars and Mercury conjoin with Saturn. So you could experience this as a heavy roadblock that brings your methodical momentum to potentially a halt. And so try not to stubbornly fight these restrictions at this time. You're being asked to take firm responsibility for how you build your life. Channel your discipline into securing your foundations, and you'll turn this frustrating pause into long lasting success that will perfectly support your goals. Gemini Saturn. Early in the month, the Libra full moon will oppose with transit Saturn, bringing tension potentially between your inquisitive mind and the demands for relational balance in some way. And so the heavy Aries energy right now is going to challenge your focus. That's kind of the key for the month. But the major pivot will happen mid month when Mars and Mercury meet with Saturn. And this could feel like a little bit of a mental roadblock, causing your fast moving thoughts to maybe feel stalled or stuck. And instead of fighting whatever limits you face this month, recognize them as an opportunity to organize your active mind and take responsibility for where you put your focus. And by creating sustainable mental systems now, you'll potentially turn these delays of the month into highly effective achievements in the long run. Cancer Saturn. Early in the month, as the Libra full moon opposes with Saturn, your emotional boundaries could face a little bit of tension from maybe outside forces. And the Aries energy throughout the month could test your foundations and how safe you actually feel. And then going into the middle of the month, when Mars and Mercury conjoin with Saturn, you could hit a little bit of an emotional roadblock, and it could feel like your feelings or momentum are facing a gridlock. And rather than getting defensive, use this time to figure out what you truly need out of life to feel safe or to achieve what you want to achieve, or to, improve things, and take responsibility for how you guard yourself. And by nurturing your feelings and building sustainable emotional systems this month, you'll transform the pause of the month into heartfelt long-term stability. For my Leo Saturns, early in the month, the Libra full moon will oppose with transit Saturn, putting your need to, shine, or your need to really feel good about yourself or confident in yourself, at odds with the demands for maybe fairness or balance within other parts of your life. And all of this Aries energy could challenge your usual discipline, but the major checkpoint arrives mid-month when Mars and Mercury meet with Saturn, and this could feel like a little bit of a roadblock to your creative momentum. It could make you feel maybe stifled or blocked, or you could, lose a little bit of confidence for some reason. And so I would try not to fight these restrictions out of pride. And you are being asked to take responsibility for how you direct your light and from building confidence from the ground up. And so by channeling your discipline into structuring your creativity, structuring your confidence, you can turn these delays into brilliant and authentic achievements. Virgo Saturn early on, as the Libra full moon opposes with transit Saturn, your carefully planned systems could face a little bit of tension from maybe external factors. And the impulsive Aries energy throughout the month could challenge your sense of perfectionism or your relationship with it. And the real turning point will hit mid month when Mars and Mercury conjoin with transit Saturn. And this could feel like a little bit of a roadblock to your productivity, maybe bringing things to a frustrating or grinding halt or slowing things down a little bit. And so instead of being overly critical or fighting the delay, use this time to refine your routines. Take responsibility for calmly applying your logic. And if you build sustainable systems now, you can turn any pause that happens for you this month into incredibly efficient, long lasting success. Libra Saturn early in the month, as the full moon in your sign opposes with transit Saturn, and you're also going through your Saturn opposition. Maybe your desire for harmony could face competing priorities from maybe the needs of others or outside forces. And the forward moving Aries energy all month could maybe challenge your foundations. Mid month, when Mars and Mercury conjoin with Saturn, though, you could encounter a point of constriction within maybe how you connect to the outside world, how you connect to other people. And it could feel like your ability to keep the peace or to, maybe even keep your own cool is temporarily slowed down. And so rather than avoiding any issues, use this time to properly channel your discipline by setting firm boundaries where possible, and take responsibility for how you manage your connections and how you manage your communication, honestly. Honor your own needs this month, and you can turn these moments of pause into equitable long-term stability and systems that can really work in your life. Scorpio Saturn. Early in the month, the Libra full moon will oppose with transit Saturn, bringing an interplay between your need for control and external demands for balance. And the very action oriented Aries energy right now could test your sense of discipline. A key moment will arrive, though, mid month when Mars and Mercury conjoin with transit Saturn. And this could feel like a structural limit to your momentum. Maybe you feel temporarily paused in some way. I would try not to push against this restriction because you are being asked to properly channel your discipline towards, inner transformation at this time. This is the key for my Scorpio Saturns. Master your intensity, build sustainable systems, and you could turn this period of focus into deep, powerful achievements in the long run. Sagittarius Saturn. Early in the month, the Libra full moon will oppose with transit Saturn, highlighting a dynamic between your need for adventure or your need to, the quest for learning and the demands maybe from the outside world, from outside forces. And the Aries energy this month could challenge your focus in some way. Going into the middle of the month when Mars and Mercury conjoin with Saturn, you could experience a period of reassessment. It could maybe feel like your momentum has been narrowed or slowed down. And instead of resisting the limits, I would properly channel your discipline to ground your grand visions. Take responsibility for your goals. And by focusing your explorations and building sustainable plans, you can turn these structural adjustments in your life into massive, long lasting success. Capricorn Saturn. Early on, the Libra full moon will oppose with transit Saturn. And so balancing your practical plans alongside outside forces is definitely going to be key. And the Aries energy for the month could test your disciplined foundations in some way. And the key moment, though, for you will arrive mid month when Mars and Mercury conjoin with transit Saturn. And this could feel like a structural checkpoint to your calculated momentum. It's kind of like a test almost, not in a scary way, but it could make you feel like maybe you're delayed and the systems that you set up in your life are going to be tested. And so rather than pushing back against the delay, properly channel your discipline and recognize this as an essential time to regroup or reassess. Take responsibility for your worldly ambitions. Take your responsibility for how you pivot. And by building whatever you're building with patience, you can transform this constricting pressure into highly reliable achievements in the long run. Aquarius Saturn. Early in the month, as the Libra full moon opposes with transit Saturn, your unique frameworks are kind of weighed against external demands for relational balance, maybe with other people or just with outside forces. And the Aries energy right now could challenge your usual discipline. But the pivot point will definitely hit mid month when Mars and Mercury conjoin with transit Saturn. And so you could experience this as a narrowing of focus. You could feel like maybe your momentum is now being carefully paced. You have to be careful, or maybe things fall a little bit easier at this time. Try not to rebel against these constricting pressures, because you're being asked to properly channel your discipline and unique insights into a way that can fit this new future. And by organizing your ideas into sustainable systems, you can really turn these limits into something that is very visionary, very long lasting, and that can carry you into the future, especially as you know the world is changing right now. And if there's anybody who's equipped to handle this, it is definitely going to be you. Pisces Saturn, early in the month, as the Libra full moon opposes with transit Saturn, this could create a dialogue between maybe your intuitive boundaries and the demands of others or outside forces. And the Aries energy all month could challenge maybe your sensitive foundations. You could feel very open, or you could feel very sensitive to a lot of heat going on. And then mid-month, when Mars and Mercury meet with Saturn, you could encounter maybe a structural boundary in some way. Maybe your intuitive flow is restrained or slowed. Maybe your intuition takes a hit. And so instead of trying to sidestep the restriction, you have to properly channel your discipline to firmly anchor your dreams into reality. Take responsibility for protecting your open nature. And by establishing sustainable emotional systems this month, which trust me, you're going to need it, you can transform this period of containment into beautiful, compassionate long-term growth that can carry you into the future.